The Pretend Promise, River City Sweethearts, written by Susan Hatler, narrated by Martha Lee.
Chapter 1. Nobody ever said finding the right person was easy, but nobody said it would be this hard either. I just wasted 10 years on a guy who, when given an ultimatum, finally admitted he didn't want to get married. Ever. A nice tidbit of info that would have been helpful a decade ago. George even had the nerve to ask me why I couldn't just be happy with the way things were, living together indefinitely with no permanent purchase. Because I want to be married with a family one day? Which I made very clear from the beginning? Call me disappointed in men, but if marriage isn't on a guy's list, he's out. Until I find this devoted love of my life, if he actually exists, I'm committing myself to dessert. All kinds. Any time of day. If my heart can't be satisfied, then at least my taste buds can swoon. To twist the proverbial knife in my already distraught gut, my coworker and friend, Ellen, just asked me to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. Apparently, she'd been so blissfully happy with her boyfriend of 4 months that they've decided to get married next weekend. Yay, love. I'd agreed to be her bridesmaid because after working together for several years, we'd become close friends over the last 4 months. She'd really been there for me after the breakup, and I was happy for Ellen, even though her sappy relationship felt like hot lava being injected into my arteries. Such was the current state of my life. It could be worse, I guess. Like, instead of trying on a cherry red evening gown right now, I could be swimming next to a great white shark during feeding time. Or maybe both were equally appealing. Ouch, I gasped as Ellen tried to zip up the back of my strapless dress, which got stuck just below my shoulder blades. Gina, you told me to order a size 6, right? Ellen frowned. Yes, check the tag. I groaned, even though I'd already guessed the truth. That my nightly routine of watching reality TV with my new boyfriend, cookie dough ice cream, had finally caught up with me. He may be high in calories, but at least he doesn't have a fear of commitment. I can be with him, or a new carton of him, until death do us part. Staring into the 3-way mirror, I watched Ellen peek inside the back of my gown, then give me an apologetic look. Maybe the sizes at Blissfully Bridal run small. Right. Because that kind of error would definitely happen at the most popular bridal boutique in downtown Sacramento. Never mind that Rachel's maid of honor dress fit like a glove, as did the bridesmaid dress for Ellen's very annoying friend from high school, Kristen. Not to diss one of Ellen's longtime gal pals, but if I had to hear Kristen rave on about her perfect boyfriend Jake one more time, well, let's just say I shouldn't be accountable for my actions. Maybe the seamstress can take it out a little, Rachel suggested. I raised my brows hopefully. Not enough material. Kristen shook her head. We'll have to order a larger size. Was it my imagination, or had Kristen seemed cheerful delivering that news? No way, I shook my head emphatically. I'll go on a liquid diet, those lemonade drink thingies. Desperate? No, not me. Ellen put a hand on my shoulder. Sorry, Gina, a dress size in a week isn't healthy and isn't going to happen. I'm gonna ask the sales lady if they can do another rush order. What? I gaped after her retreating figure. That's it? I'm supposed to accept a size 8? The bride has spoken? Don't stress, Gina. You're entitled to a few pounds after what you've been through the last few months. Rach dropped into a wingback chair and crossed her legs. Speaking of, how's the current sitch at home? Did George get off his rear and move out? No. I fell back against the iridescent satin wall and slid to the floor, chastising myself for eating that donut for breakfast this morning, and the one from yesterday morning. Kristen played with a strand of her silky red hair. Who's George? My ex. It still felt weird calling him that, especially since he hadn't vacated our apartment yet. We broke up 4 months ago and he hasn't gotten his own place. Oh, right. Kristen snapped her French manicured fingers. I remember hearing about him. He's the one you'd been with forever who never proposed? Ah, how I loved being reminded what a sucker I'd been. Your point? She knelt next to me on the fluffy white carpet, smoothed the front of her shimmering red dress, and stared me in the eyes. Sweetie, I'm going to tell you what your friends are apparently too afraid to. Your ex-boyfriend, George, moving out? It's never going to happen. I guffawed. How would you know? Obviously, taking action is not his MO. I mean, you waited how many years for a ring and that never happened? She raised a hand in the air as if to say, hello? Leave her alone, Kristen. Rach unzipped her fancy dress, let it fall to the floor, then stepped out of it. She'll move out when she's ready. Rachel's tone spoke volumes and my mouth dropped open. You think I should be the one to find another place even though I've already put myself out staying in the guest bedroom for 4 months? First 10 years, now 4 months, I was beginning to see a pattern. Rach raised a shoulder. Unless you want to change the locks and throw his stuff out, what choice do you have? My mouth opened and closed like a guppy out of water. You know I could never do that. I sighed. I'm the one who found that apartment, and it's only 3 blocks from work. It's just not right. Kristen cleared her throat, possibly to ease the obvious tension. Listen, I just closed escrow on my condo, and it has a spare room. I was going to advertise for a roommate, but you're welcome to it. She furrowed her brows. If you really want to go forward with your life, that is. My blood began to boil, not because Kristen had delivered this offer absent any shred of sensitivity, which, as a licensed marriage and family counselor, you'd think she'd have a little, but because she was so clearly and obviously right. Why was I, once again, waiting on him? Was that my MO? What was wrong with me? Although it seemed grossly unfair to have to let go of the place that had been my home for most of my 20s, it was time to stop waiting and start taking action. I straightened my spine. When can I move in? Her chin pulled back in surprise, then she smiled. It's Saturday, no time like the present, right? Rach let out a cheer. Way to go, Gina. I'll help you pack. Thanks. With the decision made, it felt like a weight had been lifted. And let me state for the record that I will never again date a man who isn't into marriage. Never. That eliminates the hot rebound I was about to suggest. Kristen stood and scooted up to the mirror in her size 4 dress that fit her slim figure perfectly. She smoothed an eyebrow, then snapped her fingers. I've got the best idea. I have a friend, and Jake recently suggested I set him up with someone. Ah, Jake. I hadn't heard about him in the last 10 minutes. Gina, he'd be perfect for you. Her face lit up in a way that made me wonder if she wanted to be with him. Ethan's an amazing guy, absolute marriage material, and recently single. He can be your date to Ellen's wedding. Rach flipped a page of her magazine with a small smile that told me she thought it was a good idea. I'd just made the decision to move. It was hard to think about dating. I don't know. Truth or dare, Kristen said suddenly. I narrowed my eyes at her. Are you really a marriage and family counselor? She rolled her eyes. It's a simple question, Gina. I'm sure you've played the game a million times. I bit back a laugh. Yeah, in junior high. She bent her index finger and rubbed her chin. I can't tell which you're uncomfortable with. Revealing the truth or doing something out of your comfort zone. Dare. An inane task sounded better than analyzing my psyche. She grinned triumphantly. I dare you to take Ethan to the wedding. If you two end up wildly in love, then I get to be a bridesmaid in your wedding. Are you allowed to put those kinds of conditions on a dare? Okay, I was stalling. Mostly because Kristen was right again. There was no good reason not to give this guy a try. Fine, as long as I can meet him ahead of time. I don't want to feel uncomfortable on such a special evening if we don't click. Deal. Kristen exchanged a satisfied smile with Rach, then clapped her hands faster than a butterfly flapping its wings. She added a squeal for good measure. You're not gonna regret this. Ethan is divine. I paused a moment, suddenly remembering some rules to our childhood game. Truth or dare back to you. Kristen's eyes lit up as if she hadn't expected to be put in the hot seat. Truth. My brain searched for the perfect question. What is Jake's worst character trait? Rach snickered, then tried to hide it with a cough. That's easy. Kristen leaned forward, her expression showing she could hardly believe she was about to reveal this. He wants me all the time. My eyes narrowed. You're counting that as a flaw? Come on. She thrust a hand to her chest. My career is emotionally draining. In the evening before bed is fine. But he can't wake me in the middle of the night or early in the morning and expect me to always be willing. Sounds rough. I feel so sorry for you. I should have known she'd never find anything wrong with the ever-perfect Jake. As I pulled my clothes off a hanger and began changing out of my too-small gown, I couldn't help wondering if staying with George so many years had made me miss my window to find a guy who wanted me morning, noon, and night. Let's face it, at my age, the best guys were taken. Not that 29 was over the hill or anything, but weren't the odds getting microscopic at this point? Crisis averted. Ellen burst into the room and pretended to wipe her brow. The dress designer has a size 10 in stock that they'll messenger over to the seamstress who will take it in for you. Can you believe the luck? What a relief, I said flatly. Although my mouth started watering as I pictured all the cookies I could snack on and still fit into a size 10. The room fell silent and Ellen checked out each of us suspiciously. What did I miss? Gina's moving in with me and I'm setting her up with a date for your wedding. Which just leaves Rachel. Kristen turned to Rach. Should I hook you up with... No way. She shook her head. I'm going stag. I suppressed a laugh at Rachel's emphatic response. Ellen had recently arranged a blind date for Rach with her fiancé Henry's friend. The date had started out promising with a pleasant dinner, then the guy suggested they make hot fudge sundaes at his place for dessert. Naked. To say he'd misjudged Rach's fondness for ice cream a la nude would be putting it mildly. As we were packing up our stuff to leave blissfully bridal, Ellen put an arm around me. You okay? I gave a small laugh. About moving out of my place with George or moving in with Kristen? Her hazel eyes filled with concern and I sighed. Truth? She tilted her head. Of course. I'm good, just nervous. What if I waited too long to get out of the wrong relationship? What if I missed my chance to find the guy for me? Maybe it wasn't the right time before. Ellen's gaze drifted down to the sparkly gem on her left ring finger and the corners of her mouth lifted. We never know when the right guy will come along, but he will, trust me. And now you'll be ready for him when he does. I'm really happy for you, Ellen. As I pulled my friend into a hug, I imagined her walking down the aisle toward the love of her life, and this time there wasn't an inkling of pain. George wasn't the right guy. Maybe timing really was everything. Maybe agreeing to live with Kristen would be the best decision I'd ever made. And maybe I should switch to low-fat ice cream. Chapter 2. I showed up to work Monday morning wearing sweats. Normally, I dressed up for the office, but I'd been at this software company for 5 years and worked in the accounting department, so it's not like I ever met with customers. Besides, I'd taken the afternoon off to haul the rest of my stuff over to the condo. Yes, that's right. Finally. As annoying as Kristen was, she'd made me realize my part in the entire debacle that had been my relationship. I mean, what kind of girl gives her boyfriend the ultimatum to propose or it's over? So not romantic. George and I started dating in college after we'd participated in a game of quarters. He'd impressed me with his ability to bounce that silver coin into a cup. Ah, young love. Somewhere along the way, beer games stopped being as impressive to me. Going somewhere special after the office, I assume? A sarcastic voice startled me out of my thoughts. My head whipped up, and I saw Rach standing in the doorway to my office, eyeing my outfit with raised brows. You scared me. I flared my eyes at her, then plopped back in my chair. Just getting the last of my things out of the apartment this afternoon while George is at work. He got a little psycho dividing up the CDs yesterday. Like each and every one was precious to him or something. Rach adjusted the clip, holding her hair up in a messy twist. That's ridiculous. It wasn't just that. I sighed, fingering my own short, dark curls, then tucked one side behind my ear. George said he misses me and thinks maybe he can change. Her eyes narrowed. You're kidding me. It's fine. I clasped my hands on my desk and leaned forward. A couple months ago I would have crumbled, thinking I could find a way to make it work. Now I realize that George's mastery of beer pong? Not so hot at 29 years old. She chuckled. Well, I'm glad you didn't fall for his desperate plea now that he supposedly figured out what he lost. You deserve better. I shrugged my shoulders and reached for my candy jar. I'm not even mad at him anymore. He is who he is, you know? I just want to get the rest of my things without a hassle. She hesitated, appearing deep in thought before accepting the wrapped butterscotch I held out for her. So, you're over George, is that what you're saying? Her body language told me she was up to something. Why would you ask that? No specific reason. She shifted back and forth on her feet before taking a breath. I do have a favor to ask of you, though. I hesitated, wondering why she looked so tense. What's up? She stepped toward me and lowered her voice. You heard that Chris Bradley gave his 2 weeks' notice last week? The traitor is going to work for the enemy. Chris was an amazing sales associate, and we paid him well, but apparently our biggest competitor had made him a better offer. Good for him, too bad for us, huh? Yeah, it's sad to see him go. She fiddled with the empty plastic candy wrapper, avoiding my gaze. So I'm totally swamped with work this week. Since you and I are the only ones left on the party committee, would you mind handling the cake, food, and decorations for Chris's Bon Voyage bash? I know it's my turn, but it'd really help me out. A few phone calls weren't all that time-consuming, but this request felt like something more. Sure, I can do that. Her face lit up. Thanks, you rock. Not so fast. I made an sound. Truth or dare? For real? She fingered a strand of hair that had fallen from her clip, then crossed her arms. Fine, truth. Are you avoiding Chris for any specific reason? I said, using a sultry tone. Chris Bradley was super hot and a serial dater. Maybe since her last date had been such a meltdown, she'd had a little fling with him. No, of course not. She gasped. I can't believe you even thought that. Just checking. I set the top back on the crystal candy jar, then laughed, holding my hands up in surrender. Not like it'd be an insult to hook up with Chris Bradley. I pictured his California tanned muscles, brown hair lightened from the sun, and baby blue eyes framed in dark lashes. No, dating Chris Bradley wouldn't be a hardship at all. My belly danced at the idea, then my face heated as I mentally cringed. Sure, I'd always known Chris was hot, but I'd never thought of him in that way. My new single girl perspective must have clicked into overdrive. Rach stared at me pointedly, showing she'd guessed where my brain had gone. Maybe you should ask him out. I hear he's not dating Cindy anymore. Me? I shook my head adamantly. No way. Her mouth dropped open. Why not? Chris is sweet, and you thought he was good enough for me. Yeah, but I'm not interested in the casual dating scene. I'm looking for a guy I can settle down with, and you know as well as I do that Chris never brings the same girl to a company party twice. Dating's not against the law, you know. She turned toward the door, then pivoted back around. You should give him a try. I totally see you guys together. My mouth dropped open. Do you want me wasting any more of my golden years with another commitment phobe? She pursed her lips. I think the golden years are in our 50s. Whatever. I pulled out my keyboard tray to finish my work so I could leave. I made a vow not to waste my time on guys who aren't looking for a serious relationship, and that's a plan I'm sticking to. I'll order his cake for you, but that's it. You'll be missing out. Turning to leave, she sang the words as if issuing a grave warning. Wrapping my arms around my chest, I watched her saunter down the hall and wondered how she'd gotten me all riled up. I spent the rest of the afternoon emptying never-ending boxes at the condo. Moving the rest of my stuff from the apartment went smoothly, thanks to George being at work. For dinner, I ordered a pizza, but Kristen opted to stick with a protein shake, which, in my opinion, was void of any flavor. While eating/drinking our respective meals, Kristen told me she'd left a message for Ethan and was waiting to hear back from him. Then she and I battled over the TV remote, finally compromising on a historical documentary, her choice, such a snoozer, and then a reality dating show, my choice, completely engaging. While watching 12 hopeful guys compete over one girl, I suddenly pictured myself as the Bachelorette with Chris and an imaginary Ethan as the final candidates vying for my attention. My body shuddered. Rachel's absurd suggestion that I date Chris Bradley must have affected me on a molecular level because I'd certainly never partake in a dating game. Between a man interested in a lifelong commitment and the other going for short-term fun, no contest. I'd only take a chance on Ethan, assuming he called Kristen back, of course. The fact that my mind had even entertained the idea of Chris? Ridiculous. He could be the sweetest, most undeniably handsome man in the world, but the way he ran through women told me to steer clear. Tingles over a hot guy would not divert me from my goal ever again. The next morning, I strode into the office dressed in a casual business suit, glad that all aspects of my life were now headed in the right direction. Since I now lived farther from the office, I had to drive instead of walk to the bakery to get my morning pastry. Okay, pastries. But it was worth it for the possibilities that awaited me. While munching on my scone, I checked emails and found a reminder from Rach to set up Chris Bradley's farewell festivities. Since I had to go upstairs anyway, I took the elevator to the second floor and knocked on the open door of Chris's office. "You got a sec?" Chris's face lit up, obviously happy for the distraction from whatever he was working on behind his large mahogany desk. "Hi, Gina. What's up?" Stepping inside, I tried to ignore how handsome he looked today. "I'm ordering your Bon Voyage cake for next Friday. Do you prefer chocolate or vanilla?" He chuckled. "You came all the way up to the sales department for that?" I shrugged, then scooped up a few chocolate-covered raisins from the San Francisco Giants candy dish on his desk. "No big deal. I needed to stretch my legs." "Maybe." He leaned back in the leather chair and laced his hands behind his head. "Or perhaps you're secretly going to miss me and wanted to spend as much time with me while you still can." Plausible, if not a tad overconfident, but I actually had to drop a vacation request form off for Ellen so she can go on her honeymoon and still have a job when she gets back. And I figured as long as I'm up here. I plopped into one of the 2 chairs across from his desk. His lips curved upward. "Well, I'm glad you stopped by. I don't get to see you enough." I swallowed, wondering why he'd want to see more of me. "Are you excited about going to work for our largest competitor? I heard they made you an amazing offer." He eyed me critically. "Chocolate." My head tilted in confusion. "They offered you chocolate?" He laughed. "The cake. You asked me which kind I preferred." "No," I corrected him. "I asked you about your new job and you dodged the question." A strange look crossed his face, but he didn't answer. "What? I've known you for 5 years and you've never been shy. Now suddenly you're clamming up on me?" I felt instantly intrigued, wondering what about his new job he didn't want to tell me. "Truth or dare?" He rubbed his chin, his knuckles sliding across his noticeable 5 o'clock shadow. "I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that." "It's a game I've been playing. You have to either answer my question honestly or perform a dare of my choosing." "I see." He set his hand on the desk. "And what do I get out of this?" My gaze dropped to his hand and I couldn't help noticing how strong it looked. And smooth. Like he could lift an axe effortlessly but also give me a shoulder rub that'd make me go boneless. I cleared my throat. "Well, in the game you'd get to do it back to me." The word "it" caused all kinds of inappropriate scenarios to go through my mind. Although, fair warning, I never picked truth, which is actually how I ended up moving in with my crazy roommate over the weekend.
Oh, really?
The phone on his desk rang, but he sent it to voicemail.
Who did you move in with?
For some reason, I felt flattered that he'd ignored his call, even though he'd done the same thing during plenty of our conversations over the years. Weird. One of the other bridesmaids in Ellen's wedding, she also set me up on a date as a dare, and oh wait, my eyes narrowed. You diverted me again, truth or dare, Chris, and I won't be distracted this time. He laughed, making me realize he really had intentionally diverted me again.
What are the ground rules on dare? My days here are numbered, but I don't think I'd get a good send-off if I streaked through the office in my boxers.
Boxers. Interesting. I cleared my throat. Okay, ground rules. No taking off clothes. He winked at me.
Much appreciated.
I flushed. Second rule, no bodily contact with someone else. That's pretty standard. Or at least it should be.
I'd say so, especially since we're in the office. On the other hand, if it were after hours.
Please don't finish that thought. I held up my hand. He made a face as though I'd wounded him.
Where's the fun in that?
Although Chris was teasing me, I knew there'd be plenty of fun with a guy like him. No doubt about that. But I wanted more than a good time. I needed a partner in life, not just for the time being. Let's just agree to keep it clean.
You're the boss,
he said. My thoughts drifted to all the different ways I'd like to give him orders, and I sucked in a breath. What had we been talking about? Oh, right. Truth or dare, pick one. He palmed the air with both hands turned up as if weighing each side before he brought his hands together in decision.
Truth.
My mind immediately raced back to his strange reaction when I'd brought up his new place of employment, and I wondered what he hadn't wanted to say. Are you looking forward to your new job?
That again, huh?
He held my gaze with a serious expression.
This is just between you and me?
Absolutely. I held my index, middle, and ring fingers up. Rule number 3, what happens in truth or dare stays in truth or dare.
All right then.
He got up, shut his office door, then sat in the chair right next to me. He swiveled so we faced each other directly, our knees almost brushing.
It was time to move on.
After several seconds, my brows came together. That doesn't answer my question.
Boy, you don't let me get away with anything.
He smirked, then looked at a spot on his desk. The air between us thickened before he finally turned back to me.
Making the switch was the right decision. I'll miss the people here, though.
He used few words, but I could tell how much he meant them. Of course you will. I mean, you've been here a long time, and it's a great place to work.
Exactly.
He nodded, then scratched the back of his neck.
But what can you do?
My stomach sank as I realized I'd miss getting to see Chris every day. Not that I did, but I'd always had the opportunity to, and now I wouldn't. Must have been a really nice offer.
Too good to pass up.
He shrugged, then leaned back in the chair.
Time to grow up and make the tough choices.
That's how I'd felt these past couple of years with George. It had been good while it lasted, but wasn't what I wanted in the end. It seemed so obvious now that I couldn't believe I'd let it go on so long. Chris cleared his throat.
My turn.
My head snapped up as I jerked from my thoughts. What? He wiggled his brows.
Truth or date?
Listening to him reveal his private worries about leaving had me forget we were playing a game. It's truth or dare, actually.
Just trying to expedite things since you told me you never choose truth.
He smirked.
But if you want to go through the motions, I'll play along. Truth or date?
I should have known he'd have something up his sleeve, but the seriousness of his expression and tone during our conversation had thrown me. Dare with an R, but
perfect.
He clapped his hands together.
There is this dinner thing for my new job tomorrow night. My boss will have his wife. Since I'm single, it might be awkward being a third wheel. So I dare you to be my date.
A string of beautiful women on his arm at various holiday parties rolled through my mind. I'm sure you can check your speed dial and pick out a real date from your many options. His eyes danced.
I'd rather go with you." My stomach fluttered in a way that seemed dangerous. Very dangerous. I scoffed. "You can't dare me to be your date." "Why not?" He seemed amused at my discomfort. "No taking off clothes, no bodily contact with someone else, and what happens in truth or dare stays there. You chose the rules, and I haven't violated any of them. So how about it?" It was hard to argue with logic, but I grappled anyway. My roommate is setting me up with a guy she says is perfect for me. Without hesitation, he said, "This is the roommate you referred to as crazy. You probably shouldn't rely on her advice too much. Take mine. Even at my worst, I'm always sane." Wow, he excelled at selling himself. No wonder he'd been offered the big bucks in software sales. But why was he being so flirty with me? Kristen isn't really nuts, more like annoyingly right all the time. Except in this instance. His lips turned up in a swoon-worthy smile. "Is this theoretically perfect date tomorrow night?" My shoulders tensed. "No." "I'll pick you up at 7 then." He snatched a notebook and pen from his desk and handed them to me. "Just write your new address and phone number here. Unless you want to forfeit, that is." It's not like I could back out of the game when I'd started it. No way. My shoulders tensed some more. Game on. With shaky hands, I scribbled out my contact information, and he let out a chuckle. "Don't be so nervous. Just think of it as a favor to an old friend." What in the... He'd dated girl after girl over the years, yet going to dinner with me, when I'm also single, would be just a friend thing? How insulting. My gut twisted at his words, but I forced a smile. Of course. What else would it be? Even though my blood boiled, I fought to stay composed as I made a hasty escape from his office. Sure, a serial dater didn't make my list, but why didn't he want me? Was I not good enough for him? Whatever. I didn't realize until later that I'd forgotten to settle the other details of his going away shindig. No way I'd go back right now, though. He'd get his chocolate cake, but that was it. And when we went to dinner tomorrow night, I'd dress up extra special, just to let him know what he was missing. Chapter 3. Planning this wedding has turned into a major headache, Ellen declared that evening from the massage table next to me. She'd wanted a group massage with her bridesmaids in lieu of a bridal shower, and the day spa had arranged the 4 tables with our heads at the center for easy conversation. I mean, my dad's been absent 99% of my life, and now he's passionate and emotional about walking me down the aisle? Like it means the world to him? "Maybe your dad feels bad about deserting you," I suggested, then nearly groaned as the massage therapist rolled her lavender-oiled thumbs into my shoulder muscles. Tension, way too much tension. And now he's trying to make up for lost time. My brutal, but in a good way, therapist kneaded her way toward my neck, locating each and every one of my never-ending knots and then pressed hard on them until the pain released. If I stopped buying groceries, I could probably afford this 2-hour treatment every week. Certainly something to consider. "If you don't want him to walk you down the aisle, then tell him so," Kristen mumbled from the table across from me. "It's your wedding, and you don't have to justify your feelings to him, or anybody for that matter. He's a big boy and made his bed, now he can lie in it." Are you giving this advice as my counselor or friend? Ellen's voice sounded as strained as my back, if that were possible. Your friend. Kristen's tone came across hard as a rock. Otherwise, I'd be charging you a hefty fee instead of buying your massage. I snickered. Somehow Kristen's tactless honesty was starting to grow on me. Plus, she'd mentioned Jake only twice since we'd met here after work. Major improvement. Ellen flipped onto her back and stared at the ceiling. What do you think, Rach? The room fell quiet except for the soft ting, ting, ting of wind chimes coming from the built-in speakers above us. When Rach didn't answer, I lifted my head and glanced over in her direction.
Her eyes were closed and she let off a soft snore. You're not going to get much advice from her. She's out cold. I wiggled my face back into the head cradle as the muscle goddess worked wonders on my neck. I'm with Kristen, though. Do what feels right to you. What does Henry say? She sighed. He tells me he'll support whatever I choose. You've already decided, Ellen. Kristen stated this as if it were an obvious fact. Otherwise, you wouldn't be torturing yourself about letting him down. Counselor this time, but it's on the house. Happy bridal shower. Her bluntness made me chuckle. Once she said it, I realized she was right. Again. If Ellen wanted her dad to give her away, she would have just told him yes. I suppose I have made up my mind. Ellen motioned for her massage therapist to lighten up on the pressure. Let's talk about something else, upbeat. How are things with you, Gina? Chris tells me you're helping him with a dinner thing tomorrow night. I groaned, my neck muscles immediately squeezing together. What? Kristen's head shot up and her eyebrows narrowed, her expression surprisingly aggressive considering she was wearing nothing but a sheet. But I'm setting you up with Ethan. It's not a date, just a friend thing. While I inwardly seethed about him not finding me date-worthy, the thought of that swoon-worthy smile made me shiver. Gee, I hope the massage lady hadn't noticed that. Seriously, he's meeting with his boss and his boss's wife, and he needs to bring someone. I've known him for years, and he asked me to go as a favor. Nothing more to it. Kristen exhaled as if in major relief. Good, because Ethan's a treasure. You're fortunate he's still available. Has he called you yet? Wait, I'm the fortunate one? What about him? Watch this magnificent treasure treat me like a friend as well. Maybe my relationship's demise hadn't been George. Maybe I'd been shooting off friend vibes for the past decade and hadn't realized it. Kristen's eyes widened. Didn't peg you as insecure, but if it makes you feel better to hear me say it, he's fortunate you're free as well. You're both fortunate. Everybody's fortunate. Can this massage be any more heavenly? Okay, Kristen just lost any points she'd previously gained with me, and any muscle strain that had dissipated came back tenfold and settled on my shoulders. No matter how deep the pressure, not 1 ounce of pain lifted. I gritted my teeth. For your information, Ethan did call me today. We're going to lunch tomorrow. My heavenly goddess began rubbing my scalp in small circular motions, and believe me, I needed the stress relief. This friend thing tomorrow night had me wigged. Why had I played truth or dare with Chris anyway? I want my mom to walk me down the aisle. Ellen's tone held quiet resolution. She's always been there for me, even when she drives me crazy, and she should be the one to give me to Henry. Ellen closed her eyes, the stress seeming to ooze away as her therapist rubbed her feet. I'll call my dad and tell him tonight. Tears formed in my eyes as emotion overtook me. Your wedding's going to be so beautiful, Ellen. With her eyes closed, she smiled. Thanks, sweetie. As I lay there under my therapist's expert hands, I thought about Ellen's relationship with Henry. They'd fallen together so easily, like two halves joining. More lovely than their wedding, they'd share a beautiful marriage. It didn't work that way for everyone. Or maybe it would. I'd meet Ethan tomorrow and find out. I'd made it to Cafe Mattia 15 minutes early. Partly because it was right around the corner from work, but mostly because I wanted out of the office. My nerves were on edge all morning, and I couldn't concentrate on debits and credits. Either I was super excited for this lunch date with Ethan or extremely nervous. Probably both. Even with all the compliments Kristen had spewed about Ethan, I still didn't know anything about him. Was he shy or outgoing, short or tall, Mr. Career or soccer dad? The possibilities made my head spin. I gulped more water the courteous waiter had already refilled twice and glanced again toward the ornately carved wooden door at the entrance just as a man walked in. That guy couldn't be Ethan. Yet the hostess just fingered her list, gestured in my direction, and was now leading him this way. But it wasn't conceivable. In all of Kristen's many praises, she'd left this part out. Hadn't told me. My mouth dropped. Kristen's friend Ethan was unbelievably gorgeous. Dark hair, dark eyes, and maybe this partly stemmed from my sitting in a Renaissance-themed restaurant, but his build under his suit had to be a replica of Michelangelo's David. Why, oh why, hadn't I been to the gym in 2 weeks? Gina Hall. This perfect specimen of a man smiled at me, and I'm embarrassed to say my mouth still hung open. I'm Ethan Harrison. Hi. I somehow managed to tilt my face toward him as he dipped down and planted a soft peck on my cheek. His smile shined. There's no other way to describe it, showing a beautiful set of white teeth as he sat in the red velvet-covered chair across from me. May I get you anything? The hostess asked Ethan with an equally stunning smile. With the way she sized him up and down, I was pretty sure she wanted to give him her phone number. Could I blame her? Instead of getting her digits, Ethan turned to me. Would you like something, Gina? Hot and attentive. Kristen's stock was skyrocketing back up. I'd love an iced tea. I'll have one as well. When the hostess turned away, he eyed my half-empty glass of water, then checked his watch. I hope you haven't been waiting long. Not at all. Only my entire life. I straightened and sucked in my belly. Seriously, did this guy work out every day? Thanks for meeting me on this side of town. Hope you found parking all right. He lifted the tall one-page menu. The firm uses a car service, so it's easy to get around. Nice. My eyes scanned the various menu choices and stopped on a salad. That should counteract the cinnamon bun I'd had for breakfast. One of my friends is getting married this weekend, and I need to fit into my bridesmaid dress, so I think I'll order the spinach salad. In that case, you may want them to hold the bacon bits. He grimaced. Sorry, I wasn't trying to give you food advice, that just slipped out. Obviously, you should order whatever you want. I'm a bit of a health nut, and I should probably just stop talking while I'm behind. He looked sheepish. Forgive me. No worries. His comment had stung, but he obviously didn't mean anything by it. First dates were notorious for being awkward. It wasn't like he'd expect me to have a rock-hard body like his, right? I mean, the thought of giving up my new relationship with snickerdoodles made me shudder. A spinach salad was as far as I was willing to go. Our waiter picked the perfect moment to bring us our drinks and ask for our orders. Insalata di spinaci. I bit back a laugh at my hilarious attempt at an Italian accent. No sense omitting the bacon bits when I wanted them. Ethan should know up front what he's getting into. Instead of realizing I'd been kidding around with my silly accent, he gave me a nice compliment. Then he made eye contact with the waiter. Vorrei capellini al pomodoro, per favore. His accent sounded flawless, although I didn't really have any way to test its authenticity. Well, other than the one time I'd rented Under the Tuscan Sun. The waiter didn't seem as impressed, just quickly replied, I'll put the order in right away. I placed my napkin in my lap, thinking Ethan was getting more interesting by the minute. Where did you learn Italian? Living in Italy, actually. His face lit up at the topic. In college, I spent my junior year abroad at this great apartment in Rome. I've only been back to Italy twice since, so it's been challenging to keep hold of the language. Only twice since college? Must be nice. I'd been to Europe, never. My girlfriends and I had spent a long weekend in Cabo once, though. That had been pre-George and pre-knowing my drinking limit with margaritas. As Ethan rattled on about living in Italy, the tale about drinking his cappuccinos standing up instead of sitting, because it costs less, apparently, was quite entertaining, but the history on the ruins at the Roman Forum had my attention drifting. My eyes wandered toward the entrance, and my heart stopped. Chris Bradley had just walked in, and not alone. Standing next to him was the anti-Gina. Whereas I was 5 feet 4 inches, she had to be at least 5'8". Loose dark curls framed my face, while her ebony strands were long, thick, and straight. And the way she was gazing up at him, I'd bet she wouldn't make an issue of him suggesting truth or date like I had. The waiter sat a basket of bread on our table, and Ethan paused after saying something about Julius Caesar. "Uh-huh," I said, then he continued. Although I tried to focus on his excitement over Caesar's letter to Cicero, as if drawn by a magnet, my eyes drifted to where Chris and his lunch date had been seated by the street window. No wonder he'd made it clear to me that this dinner with his boss was a friend thing. Why wasn't he taking the brunette beauty, though? "Gina?" My head whipped back to my lunch date. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" He finished chewing his bite. "If you'd studied much of Caesar." "Only the salad. I learned that I don't like anchovies on it." I wrinkled my nose, unsure if he'd get my sense of humor. "I'm sorry." He chuckled. "My minor was in Italian studies, and I tend to talk about Italy's history more than the average person wants to know. What did you major in?" "Frat parties." I smiled and put my hands in my lap as the waiter set our dishes on the table. "And also accounting." "Tell me about that." I gave Ethan the rundown on my dad's plastering business and how I'd learned to run his books in high school, which naturally fed my interest in accounting. He seemed engrossed listening to my background, which was sweet since it really wasn't that extraordinary. The only way this lunch date could improve would be if I could stop glancing at Chris's table. Suddenly, Chris's date rose from her chair and strode toward the restroom. When I looked back towards Chris, our gazes locked. He'd caught me spying on him. My face heated and I turned back to Ethan as casually as possible. What was I saying? Ethan's brows came together. "Someone you know?" "What?" I reached for my water. "Oh, over there, just a person I work with. Well, used to work with. He's given notice and, yeah." "Really?" Ethan looked in Chris's direction and I concentrated on the ice-cold liquid going down my throat as I drained my glass. "He's heading over here." I choked on the water and covered my mouth. "Gina, fancy meeting you here." Chris's spry tone sent unwanted vibrations through me. He fixed an intent stare on Ethan. "Hi, Chris Bradley. Gina and I work for the same company." "Not for long, I hear." Ethan accepted Chris's outstretched hand. "Ethan Harrison." If Chris had noticed my date's icy tone, his face didn't show it. Sad but true. His quick retort made it unclear whether he was answering Ethan's question or commenting on his name. Why had I chosen a restaurant so close to work? The sudden tension at the table felt thick, but I couldn't stop myself from peering up at Chris. "I hear you and Cindy broke up. Who's the new girl?" Something odd passed through Chris's eyes, then the corner of his mouth lifted. "Tina's the human resources manager at my new company. She's explaining my benefits over lunch, but I'm guessing dating her is not included in the package. I can ask, though, if you're curious." Now my cheeks were on fire. "I'm not." Chris glanced back at his table. Tina had returned and was watching us with obvious curiosity. "Well, I'd better get back." He took a retreating step. "You two enjoy your lunch." "We will." Ethan's voice was firm. After Chris left, he lifted his fork. "Former flame." "Chris?" My eyes bulged as if the thought were ludicrous. Which it was, since his gig was playing the field, with everyone but me, that is. No, not even close. He raised his brows as if surprised. "Interesting. He seemed a bit territorial over you." "I don't think so." Although Chris had given me an intense look, which made no sense. Those blue eyes were hard to stop thinking about, but I managed to finish the last bite of my salad, which did not leave me satisfied. Just like I wasn't satisfied not knowing what Chris's look meant. But when Ethan asked for the check, I decided not to order anything else. "You're nice, Ethan. I'm glad Kristen introduced us." "Me too." He leaned forward, wearing an easy smile. "She met you because you're both in the same wedding, is that right?" "Yes." My neck went stiff as female laughter echoed from the direction of Chris's table. "We're actually roommates now."
That's what I heard. He reached for the check as soon as the waiter set it down. How's living with Kristen?
It's a lesson in compromise. I laughed, realizing how true that was. But we're having a good time. Thanks for lunch.
Anytime.
He set a few bills in the check folder, pushed it to the side of the table, then leaned on an elbow.
What about dinner Friday night? If you're free, that is. I know it's short notice.
My insides glowed at the invitation. Actually, we have the rehearsal dinner Friday night.
I see.
He kept his eyes on me as the waiter took the bill.
Saturday night?
Is the wedding. The reason Kristen had introduced us in the first place. Here was my chance. I'd screened him, charming, considerate, and apparently eager to see me again. I'd been quite comfortable with him all evening, with the exception of his bacon comment. I bit my lip, but for some reason couldn't pull the trigger on inviting him to be my date to the wedding. Suddenly, Chris's intense blue eyes invaded my mind, warming my belly. I frowned. How about dinner tomorrow night? I know it's not the weekend, but...
I'd love to,
Ethan said. We both smiled at the same time, then rose from the table. He came up beside me, his arm shadowing my lower back as we strolled toward the exit. Every ounce of me ached to scan Chris's table to see if he and the gorgeous brunette were indeed discussing business, but I refused to look. It was time for me to make the hard decisions and grow up, which included ignoring the same impulses that had led me wrong last time. Chapter 4. Standing in front of the three-way mirror at Blissfully Bridal for my second dress fitting, I stared at the elegant red gown which, this time, was way too big on me. I checked my watch for the umpteenth time. Please tell me we're almost finished? Ellen pinched some fabric together at my back, which smoothed out a minuscule crease on the bodice of my gown.
Not quite. Out of pins.
The exotic seamstress Katya huffed as she rose from her kneeling position and patted my arm.
I'm gonna be right back. Try not to move, hon. We don't want you to bleed on the dress.
I'll help. Ellen hurried after the seamstress, needing to supervise every job related to the wedding, no matter how tiny. Although, if she'd been supervising my calorie intake the last few months, then we wouldn't be here, having a size 10 made into an 8, and I'd be at home getting ready for my friend date like I was supposed to be. Not that I'd ever give up my new beau for a smaller dress size. Cookie dough ice cream had proved to be a delectable companion. But I didn't want Chris to look bad in front of his new boss by making him late. Unfortunately, I couldn't call to tell him I'd been held up by a super anal bride because I'd inadvertently left my cell in the car. I tapped my heeled shoe and turned to Rach, who was sitting cross-legged in a white satin-covered chair playing with her phone. How much more can they possibly tweak this dress? It figures Ellen would find someone as finicky as her. I'm beginning to have empathy for pincushions. You know how Ellen is. Rach ran her fingers across her cell screen. It has to be perfect with a capital P. I frowned. Who are you texting? Nobody, just cruising the net looking for coupons. She pressed an icon on the screen. After this, Ellen and I are hitting the mall to swimsuit shop for her Hawaiian honeymoon. Should be relatively low stress compared to this anyway, if you want to come. Can't, I have a dinner thing. Lifting my wrist, I checked the time again. I'm supposed to be there in 20 minutes. How long does it take to get a few measly pins? I already don't have time to go home and change, let alone touch up my makeup and hair. We're lucky Katya squeezed us in this late on a Wednesday night. You know how booked her schedule is. Then she paused. Wait, who are you going out with? A guy? More like a hot guy. Who's sweet, makes me smile when he teases, and who finds all women dateable except me. Chris Bradley. She squealed. You asked him out like I told you. I'm so proud. It's not like that at all. I raked my fingers through my hair, trying to, unsuccessfully, bring the flattened curls to life again. He and I were playing truth or dare, and sounds sexy. Her phone went back in her handbag and she gave me her full attention. When did that happen? And don't spare even the smallest detail. Stop. I threw her a look that said, "Give me a break." You know I'm not interested in Chris. You're a girl, you're single, and you have eyes. Her hands fisted in her lap. So, once again, I ask, why not? I twisted toward her, jerking back when I felt a poke in my hip. Let's see. Alicia, Grace, Carol, Krista, Megan are girls he's dated in the past. So? You were with George. What did you expect a young, successful, attractive guy to do? Live a celibate life, hoping your very long-term and seeming to have no end relationship would suddenly come to an end? Would that be so wrong? Of course not. I rolled my eyes to show how ludicrous the thought was. A girlfriend or two would be a different story, though. It'd show he wants relationships, not just the nearest pretty face. Do you want me to waste another decade of my life on Mr. Wrong? With Chris? She bit her bottom lip. I don't know. That'd be a mighty fun decade. The image of Chris's hand popped into my mind. Smooth, tan, strong. I shivered. Here's a more likely scenario. We date for a month, I fall for him, then I'm crushed when he's bored and moves on to the next girl. My heart ached at the mere thought. You have to agree that is his pattern. Rach twisted her mouth to the side. He was with Cindy over a month, I think. Now she was reaching. 2 months then, whatever. I want more than he has to offer. You should understand where I'm coming from. Don't you want to get married and have kids one day? Yes. She crossed her legs and withdrew her cell again. Unfortunately, I can't find a man who won't sleep with my hairdresser. Ugh, I groaned. Rachel's ex was such a louse. At least George never stooped that low. How low? Ellen reappeared with Katya and they began attacking the gown again. What are we talking about? Cheating? I peeked at the time. Ellen, the dress looks great, and I hate to say this, but I have somewhere to be. We're almost done. She crouched down to where the hem swept the floor, pointed to a spot near the slit, and Katya went at it. Ellen gazed up at me, concern in her eyes. Who's cheating on who? Jeremy, I said, old news. Rachel sighed. Can we make it a rule to never again bring up the J word? Deal. I couldn't help wondering if any of the women Chris had dated overlapped. Rach, do you have Chris's number in your phone? She gave me a weird look. Why should I have his number? Her defensive tone made me wonder. Calm down. I just need to tell him not to pick me up at my house. He's supposed to be there in 8 minutes and, you know. I gestured toward the ladies crouching at the hem of my already well-fitted dress. I believe we have it. Katya spoke through a mouthful of pins. What do you think, Ellen? We all gazed in the center mirror at the striking red strapless number and held our breaths, waiting for the bride's decision. With the many pins, it flowed over my curves without a single wrinkle, crinkle, or flaw. The dress looked amazing. Well, according to me, anyway. We'd have to hear the boss's conclusion. Ellen's expression was unreadable. I fought not to bounce on my heels as the minutes ticked by, and I sensed the very real possibility that we'd be spending all night tailoring this gown. She skirted around the dress, eyeing every inch up and down. Finally, her gaze flew to Katya, to Rachel, then landed on me. Her face broke with emotion, and she put both hands to her cheeks as tears filled her eyes. It's just perfect. Beautiful. I let out a whoosh, ready to unzip out of this thing. Thank goodness. Instead of letting me skedaddle, Ellen pulled me into a crushing bear hug and refused to let go. She let out a sob. Oh, Gina. I pulled back, pushing her dirty blonde locks away from her face, trying to gauge what was going on. Are you okay? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I think it just finally hit me. I'm getting married in 3 days. Witnessing her tears of joy, my throat suddenly tightened and my own eyes watered. You're supposed to be smiling. You and Henry will have the world's most perfectly organized wedding." A grin broke across her face, then she leaned in for another hug. I held my friend and savored the moment. "I know you guys will live happily ever after, with a very nice tan from your honeymoon to boot." Her shoulders bobbed as she chuckled. "Well, I have to get in on this." Rach threw down her handbag, hurried over, then draped her arms around us and started sniffling. "Kristen's going to be jealous she missed out." She probably would be, because it felt like one of those moments that come out of nowhere but that we remember forever. Not at the bridal shower, not at the wedding, but in a bridal boutique's dressing room where a fastidious seamstress watched on with misty eyes. After I changed into my gray pantsuit with a white camisole underneath, why hadn't I worn something nicer to work today, like, I don't know, a cocktail dress? I hurried to my car where I found 3 voicemails from Chris. "Gina, it's Chris. I'm a little early, but you're not answering the door, so I thought I'd call in case you were indisposed and I had to talk you out." Then a beep beep. "Hey, Gina, me again. Your roommate arrived and invited me in. Really hoping you show up soon. She's going off about your friend Ethan, and I'm not sure how much more I can take. Call me." Next, a beep beep. "Now I'm worried. It's after 7 and your roommate couldn't reach you either. I'm waiting in my car because she asks a lot of personal questions, like she's trying to psychoanalyze me or something. Hope everything's all right. Call when you get this." I noted 2 missed calls from Kristen. Part of me wanted to chew her out for interrogating my friend date, but the rest of me wanted to find out what she'd learned. After texting Chris that I'd have to meet him at the restaurant, I checked my practically makeup-free face in the visor's mirror. All I had in my purse was lipstick, so I dabbed on the Mocha Madness, then drove to the location Chris texted back to me. Since it was a weeknight, I managed to find street parking less than 2 blocks away from the address, and my heels clicked against the pavement as I ran down the block. As I arrived, Chris stepped out of his sedan, looking very hot in a suit and tie as he handed his keys to the valet driver. He glanced up just before I practically barreled into him. "I'm sorry I'm so late," I managed between gulps of air. "Really had to hit the gym soon." I grabbed his arm, ready to explain. "Ellen called me for a last-minute dress fitting. When we started running late, I realized my cell was in my car, but I had on the dress and there were all these pins." "Don't worry." His expression was surprisingly calm as he eyed my hand clutching his arm. "You've got quite a grip. Not that I'm complaining." I couldn't believe he wasn't freaking out. George had worked himself into a fit when I'd made us late. "But it's your first dinner with your new boss. You dared me to help you look good, not make a bad impression. Are you upset with me? I take full blame. Please tell your boss that—" "Gina." He cupped my chin between his thumb and index finger, his light blue eyes holding me captive. And my heart fluttered. "It's fine, really." Standing this close, mesmerized by his soothing gaze, I breathed in his spicy aftershave. "This is an important dinner. You can't be so forgiving. How about I let you make it up to me then?" He whispered it like a promise I wanted badly to fulfill, then took hold of my hand and tugged me toward the entrance. "Let's not keep them waiting any longer, though." The gold-framed automatic doors opened as we crossed the wildly patterned burgundy carpet, and a flutter rolled through my belly as he kept hold of my hand. Did he notice that he still had it? Or was he so used to holding a girl's hand that he did it absent-mindedly? Because every cell in my body was very aware of his warm skin against mine. Chris gave his name to the host, who led us to a private room I was surprised to see filled with 6 tables. Most people were standing, a glass of beer or wine in their hand. I leaned toward Chris. "I thought it would just be your boss and his wife?" "That's what I was told." He shrugged, but didn't seem uncomfortable with the unexpected change. With a little squeeze, he released my hand as we wove between tables toward a tall, handsome man wearing rimless glasses. Chris held out his arm. "Walt, sorry we're late." The older gentleman shook Chris's hand and clapped him on the shoulder.
Glad to have you, Chris. There are a few people I'm eager to introduce you to. As Walt led Chris around the room, I marveled at Chris's ability to charm everyone. He seemed to do it effortlessly, too, as if it came naturally to him. When he introduced me to Walt's wife as Gina, instead of my friend Gina, I wondered if she thought I might be his girlfriend. Not that I wanted her to think that. Although, why not? It's not like she knew he preferred to bring a friend as his guest rather than someone on his speed dial. I don't know why his not finding me date-worthy still bugged me. Must have bruised my ego, I guess. No other reason I should care. Nor was there a good excuse for my squinting in the direction of the brunette vixen I recognized from Cafe Mattia. She strode over to Chris and chatted him up with her own charm. Didn't Ms. Human Resources Manager have her own date? It turned out she did not have her own date. I knew this because she was seated at our table, next to Chris. Why he wasn't sitting next to his new boss was beyond me. No, they'd seated me next to Walt's wife Cynthia, and Walt was on the other side next to another newbie named John Baird, who laughed a bit too loud, as if he was nervous. "How did you and Chris meet?" Cynthia said, making it hard for me to hear what Chris and Ms. HR were saying. "We work together at the software company Chris is leaving," I said, trying my best to ignore the feminine chuckle coming from Ms. HR. I mean, really, were they going to talk close like that all night? Where was our waiter? On the other side of the room, in fact. Not about to break up whatever scintillating, I'm sorry, but it couldn't be 401k related conversation that was making Ms. HR drop that sexy laugh every few seconds. "Oh, I'm familiar with your company." Cynthia proceeded to tell me how her husband's software business would have much better opportunities for Chris, which was probably true or Chris wouldn't have taken the job. After Cynthia turned her attention to the menu, I leaned over to Chris. "Would you mind ordering me a Cobb salad? I need to run to the ladies' room." He gave me a look I didn't know how to interpret. "Sure. Thanks." I might have stayed until the waiter had hit our table before excusing myself, but I couldn't take any more of Ms. HR's throaty laughter. When I got to the powder room, I splashed cold water on my face. If Chris wanted to talk to Tina all night, then why had he bothered asking me to come? And why hadn't he saved me from listening to Cynthia wax on about her hubby's company when I wanted to be talking to him? I mean, I'd rather be talking to Ethan about Julius Caesar. Well, almost. Then I told myself to be fair. Chris had dared me to be his date before he'd known Tina would be here. He apparently found her more attention-worthy than me, which was a huge kick in the gut. Okay, so I hadn't exactly acted overjoyed when he'd asked me out. Maybe I had been a bit snarky when I'd seen him on a lunch date with her. And, well, I had made him late for his important dinner. But I'd done him a favor. More important, I'd been looking forward to spending time with him, which just showed what a fool I was. If Chris could hurt me over something like this, imagine how vulnerable I'd be if I really let him in. I picked up a fancy hand towel from the basket and dabbed my face. Then I slid mocha madness over my lips, once again wishing I looked my best tonight. Ms. HR sure did. Staring at my reflection, I gripped the edges of the sink and forced myself to accept reality. This wasn't a competition I could win. Chris had only invited me to avoid being a third wheel, which he wasn't anymore. If he preferred to be with this Tina girl, then as a friend I should excuse myself and go home. Besides, TV and dessert would be better than suffering through more of their flirting. Chris had obviously made his choice, so I just needed to bow out gracefully. I tried to convince myself that leaving didn't bother me. My stomach tightened. No, not at all. With my head down, I hurried out of the ladies' room, ready to make excuses and bail on this shindig. Instead, I crashed into a solid chest wearing a silky blue tie. "Sorry, I wasn't watching." "You can bump into me anytime." Chris rubbed my elbows as I peeled myself away from him. "I'm surprised Ms. HR let you sneak away for a minute." Well, that wasn't the tactful way I'd imagined bowing out of our friend date.
I raised my hands in the air, ready to take it back when he opened his mouth first.
So she is coming on a bit strong, right?
He shook his head, then glanced behind him as if making sure she hadn't followed or something.
I thought it was just me being paranoid.
I bit out a laugh. Not at all. I couldn't laugh that sexy over and over if I tried. And really, if you were that funny, you'd be doing stand-up.
That hurts.
He bopped his fist over his heart, then his voice became deadly serious.
But she is a problem. I haven't been able to talk to you because of her.
He had to be joking. I mean, what single, attractive guy gets annoyed by a beautiful woman showing interest? Like he'd really prefer conversation with me, not someone who played the field as much as Chris did. Why is it a problem? I mean, she's pretty and you are, single. Glad I corrected myself. I'd been about to say hot. So insanely hot. He gave me a strange look, then we stepped aside as a man in a business suit approached, heading for the men's room.
I have a rule about dating people from work.
Why? Maybe that's the reason he'd made it clear that tonight was a friend thing. Not because he didn't find me dateable, but because he had standards about going out with coworkers. He gave me a side glance.
I can't say.
Oh, come on. I raised my eyebrows. No way he could leave it at that. Truth or dare, Chris? The corners of his mouth came up.
And what happens in truth or dare stays there, right?
Exactly. I bit my lip and kicked my heel against the floor, dying to know what he was keeping from me. Rule number 3.
Okay, truth.
He ran his hands through his hair, took a breath, then his eyes found mine.
There was this girl from work. She kinda broke my heart.
My pulse sped up. Broke his heart. That had to mean he'd fallen for her, which didn't make sense. Or maybe it did. Maybe that's why he only dated casually. What happened? He shrugged in a what can you do way.
She was in love with another guy.
Oh gosh. Wow, that had to hurt. I couldn't help wondering if she had been a girl from our office or if it had happened at the place he'd worked before. Poor guy. I'm sorry.
Thanks, actually.
He stroked his chin as if he'd just thought of something.
Maybe you can help. You did want to make up for being late tonight, right?
Of course, I said, still unable to believe he hadn't freaked over that. What can I do? Pointing back and forth between the two of us, he said,
If Tina thinks that you and I are together, she'd probably back off.
The thought of not hearing that throaty laugh one more time caused a smile to spread across my face, and I held my fist out for a bump. Game on.
Thanks, Gina.
Returning my grin, he bounced his fist off mine.
I think we'll make a great team. I'll meet you at the table.
My tummy fluttered at his team comment, probably just my body's reaction to being glad I could do him this favor. That's all. Starting a new job, he really wouldn't need distractions with romance at the office. Or potentially getting his heart crushed when it didn't work out, yet still having to see her every day. And it wasn't lost on me that Chris and I wouldn't be working together anymore. His rule would no longer apply. Chapter 5. When I got back to my seat, Tina was engaged in an animated conversation with the woman next to her, and neither seemed to notice my return. Cynthia smiled up at me, then gave her attention back to her husband and the story he was telling. Having a minute to myself, I folded my hands and studied the room. Even though I'd felt awkward about my outfit, I was relieved to see other women wearing business clothes as well. Tina, of course, wore a very attractive black cocktail dress that accented her slim figure. Whatever. So my pantsuit fit a bit more snugly than when I bought it. It's not like the button at the waist was popping. Much. The waiter set our plates down at the same time that Chris returned to his chair. Tina immediately twisted in her seat.
Chris, a handful of us are going for drinks tomorrow night at this great Irish pub. We'd love it if you joined us.
Was it my imagination, or had she said you in a very singular way? He cleared his throat.
Thanks for the invitation, but
we'd love to. I put my arm around Chris, my fingernails grazing the back of his neck, and I swear he shivered. "Sweetie, I'd love to spend time with the people you'll be working with." Ms. HR seemed surprised at my response, as if she'd concluded, rightfully, that Chris and I were just friends. "Ha." He twisted toward me, his lips twitching ever so slightly. "If you're up for it, then absolutely." "Thanks." Electric sparks darted through my fingertips each time our skin touched as I played with the back of his hair, which was heavenly soft. Thinking I was on a roll, I laughed my throatiest laugh but ended up coughing. Not my finest moment. Yeah, this would be a good time to dig into the salad our waiter had set down. Chris exchanged a few more words with Ms. HR, who I'm happy to say neglected to flirt this time, then he turned to me with his eyes dancing. "You're the best." "I know." I smiled back, glad I hadn't bowed out after all, especially when Chris slipped some chocolate-covered raisins onto my dessert plate. Impressive that my pretend boyfriend remembered I liked them. The rest of the evening went smoothly. Everyone welcomed Chris and seemed genuinely happy that he'd be working with them. And the boss's wife, Cynthia, adored me. She even invited us to go sailing this weekend, but I regretfully declined because of Ellen's wedding. When Chris walked me to my door and gave me a hug that sent shivers to parts of me I hadn't known existed, I had to resist inviting him in for, coffee. Remembering my vow to only date men who wanted commitment, I pulled away first and stepped back. He told me he'd pick me up at 8 tomorrow night for drinks, and I reassured him I'd be ready this time. I closed the door, hurried to the wooden blinds, and peeked through the slats to watch him drive away. What started as a disaster had turned into a fun night. I dropped onto the couch and fantasized about tomorrow night when I'd play couple with Chris in front of Ms. HR again. That's when the bomb dropped in my stomach. Ethan, dinner, tomorrow night. How could I have forgotten? I couldn't cancel on Chris now, though. Ms. HR would sink her claws into him for sure. What to do? One thing for sure, this called for ice cream. After an hour of watching reality TV, I still had no clue how to resolve my double booking problem for tomorrow night, so I inserted a spoonful of cookie dough ice cream into my mouth, hoping a solution would come to me. Instead, my cell phone let out a chirp chirp. My heart skipped a beat when I saw a text from Chris. "You still up? Just wanted to thank you again for tonight. You're an awesome girlfriend." I bit my lip, hating how the word girlfriend thrilled me when I knew it was only in fun. Happy to save you from beautiful HR reps whose laughter should be rated X. Not 10 seconds later, I received, "Not half as gorgeous as you, honey." Warmth spread across my belly, but remembering my lack of makeup, there's no way he meant it, so I sent back, "As my boyfriend, you're obligated to say that, but thanks anyway. Tomorrow I'll be sure to wear something dressier so you don't dump me for Ms. HR. When he didn't respond right away, I panicked. Had I gone too far with our joking? As the seconds ticked by with no response, I longed to retract my sent text and tried to distract myself by staring at the TV as the bachelorette debated which guy to choose for her solo date. I jumped when Kristen's bedroom door suddenly squeaked open and she trudged out wearing flannel pajamas. Since it was after 10 o'clock and I hadn't heard a peep from her, I'd assumed she'd hit the sack already. She grabbed a bottle of flavored mineral water from the fridge and then plopped down next to me on the couch. "Who are we rooting for?" A special cell service to retrieve my mortifying sent texts. The pilot with the big blue eyes. I checked my cell, which still hadn't beeped, to make sure I hadn't accidentally turned it off or something. My numbers add-up screensaver stared back at me, showing me my phone was still on and functioning. Ugh. He's hot, cooks, and gave her a foot rub earlier. Not bad. She raised a brow, then tore her eyes from the screen. "When did you get home from your date?" "An hour ago, and you know it was a friend thing." I groaned when the bachelorette picked the musician instead of the very adorable pilot. "He's clearly on the show to promote his new indie album. Can't she see that?" After a sip of her bubbly, calorie-free drink, she screwed the blue top back on the bottle. "Women typically pick the wrong guy, thinking he'll change for her." "Well, not me." Since the show had gone to commercial, I turned all my attention to Kristen. No way, no how. Chirp, chirp. I immediately scanned the screen on my cell. Wear the sweats you wore to the office Monday if you want. Whenever you walk into a room, I can't take my eyes off you. My heart flipped over. How had he known what I'd worn to the office Monday morning? I reread his text in case I read it wrong. That from your friend? She emphasized the word friend and gave me a knowing look. If you're not interested in getting to know Ethan, just say so. Of course I want to get to know Ethan. Actually, I wanted to reread Chris's text a third time, but not under Kristen's eagle-eye gaze. As a matter of fact, we're having a second date tomorrow night. She eyed the large spoonful of ice cream I'd stuck in my mouth. But you haven't invited him to Ellen's wedding. I swallowed the icy bite, then flinched at the vice-like head pain that followed. Brain freeze. Clearly, the universe was telling me to stop flirting with Chris and start paying attention to the guy who didn't fear commitment. Like Kristen said, men don't change. I'm going to ask Ethan, okay? What's with the pressure? Do you have money invested in this or something? You don't have to bite my head off. She narrowed her eyes at me, then did the unthinkable. She lifted my spoon, yes, the one full of high-calorie ice cream, and after a moment's pause, brought it to her mouth. Kristen. Witnessing this earth-shattering display, I could hardly speak. What is wrong? She closed her eyes as if to savor that spoonful of forbidden deliciousness which I'd never seen her indulge in. Ellen asked me to remind you about the group mani-pedi appointment during your lunch hour tomorrow. Not for me, though. My nails are already done. Tell me. No way I would let her out of it. Truth or dare, Kristen? She looked at me point blank. Dare. My forehead crinkled in concern. Did something happen with Jake? Shaking her head, her voice tightened. I chose dare. Fine. Not knowing what went down, I knew the only thing to bring her back up. Hey, it had worked for me. So I went to the freezer and pulled out another carton of my new boyfriend. Don't judge me, they were on sale. And handed her the pint-sized container. Reality TV the rest of the evening, and you have to eat this entire thing. The corners of her mouth turned up. You're on. We giggled as the next show started, and by the time we'd finished off our respective cartons, I figured it was too late to text Chris back. Not that I would have asked him what I wanted to know anyway. If he'd been playing around when he sent that text to me, or if he'd meant it. The next morning, I sat in my quiet office, mindlessly plugging numbers into the general ledger when someone said my name. My head whipped up, and I half expected to see Ethan demanding to know why I hadn't invited him to the wedding. I'd still been trying to figure out that answer myself. Instead, Chris stood in the doorway, eyeing my outfit with a smile. Decided not to go with the sweats, I see. Whenever you walk into a room, I can't take my eyes off you. My face heated, and I put a hand over my heart. Chris, didn't your mom ever tell you not to sneak up on a girl? No, but she did tell me never to kiss on the first date. He shrugged. Not that it's applicable in this situation. Hardly. His mother's advice had been good. Any woman with eyes would be very amenable to kissing him, first date or not. What brings you down to the first floor? Dropping off my final expense report. He walked over by my desk and set a piece of paper in my inbox. Also, I got your email about my going away lunch tomorrow. A wave of sadness came over me at the thought of not seeing Chris anymore, but I forced myself not to show it. Chocolate cake as requested, and I hope the menu's all right with you? Of course. He sat down in the chair across from my desk. Why don't we go to dinner tonight before we meet up with everyone, just you and me? I stared, dumbfounded. What? Why? The corners of his mouth twitched at my unintelligent response. For fun? To make sure my girlfriend has a good meal? Oh, I let out a relieved breath. For a minute, I'd thought Chris had asked me out, for real. That's sweet of you, honey, but I'm already booked. His nose wrinkled. You really shouldn't make plans without checking with me first, dear. Oh, really? I laughed at the way he managed to keep an innocent face while sounding like a barbarian. Honey, when did you get so possessive? His eyes met mine and his voice lowered. You can't blame me for wanting you all to myself. Heat sizzled between us and I reveled in it. Think of how much more you'll want me by having to wait. You don't play fair. He held my gaze a few moments longer, then finally checked his watch and stood up. I'd better go. Phone conference in a few minutes. We still good for 8 o'clock? Yep. I'd have to cut things short with Ethan, but I wouldn't leave Chris in a lurch. And I promised to be on time. Thanks. He stepped backward toward the door. I'll be counting the minutes, dear. Me too, darling. I watched him leave, then drop the expense report back to my desk, unable to control the huge grin spreading across my face. I couldn't wait to play more of our flirtatious game tonight. Chapter 6. Gina, you responded to the RSVP saying you were bringing a date to my wedding, but Kristen tells me you haven't asked Ethan. Ellen managed to sound quite indignant for a girl lying in a massage chair, her eyes closed, as the manicurist painted white tips on her perfectly filed toenails. Is Ethan in or out? What's it going to be? Tension tightened in my shoulders, and I forced my hand to stay still as the manicurist clipped away at hangnail after hangnail. My poor nails had been neglected way too long. Why is everyone pressuring me about my progress with Ethan? Because you're our friend and we're interested in your life? Ellen's tone made it sound like a no-brainer. The big bar in the massage chair rolled up my back, pressing into some knots that I swear had come back since the other day. Uh-huh. Oh, fine. Ellen sounded as if she'd been caught. You know how expensive it is per head, and if he's not coming, I need to know. Henry's grandparents keep inviting people, even though I've turned in the numbers already. They're driving me insane. Isn't that what in-laws are for? I joked. Rach tilted her head in Ellen's direction as her manicurist lathered cream on her hands. In his grandparents' defense, you did kind of spring this wedding on all of us. I'm surprised they didn't think you were preggers. Ellen's mouth fell open. If they did, they didn't ask, unlike some people. A burst of laughter escaped my mouth. You didn't, Rach. She shrugged. Like you didn't wonder the same thing before I told you she wasn't. Ellen opened her eyes long enough to roll them. My mom inquired as well, but I'm not going to wait to marry the love of my life just to avoid silly rumors. My brows wiggled up and down. No kids in the near future? It's stressful enough planning this wedding. I can't even think that far ahead. Finally, her lids opened and she turned my way. So, what's the verdict on Ethan? The pressure in my back mounted. Like I told Kristen, we're going to dinner tonight and I'll ask him then. Don't give away my date seat. Speaking of Kristen, how's the living sitch? Rachel's tone held humor in it. I figured you would have pulled each other's hair out by now. Not yet. I grunted as the roller found a painfully tight spot in my upper back. Then I adjusted the remote control to concentrate on that area only. I'm afraid I may have created a monster. You know how anal Kristen is about healthy food, mostly protein shakes? Well, last night I dared her to eat a carton of ice cream. You guys still playing Truth or Dare? Rach eyed her now French manicured fingernails and thanked the lady, who nodded back to her. It's fun, especially playing with Chris, but I shook my head to clear that thought away. Except I noticed 2 of my donuts missing this morning, and Kristen always eats oatmeal for breakfast. Sounds like you're a delectable influence. Rach's eyes went wide. Uh-oh. We might need your size 6 dress after all, Gina. Don't even joke, Ellen snapped back, making us both chuckle. Speaking of the bridesmaid's dress, Katya finished the adjustment, so she wants you to try it on again tonight, just to be sure. When had my life turned go, go, go? Okay, I'll stop by after work. I hope it won't take long. I'm meeting Ethan for dinner in Old Sack at 6. Ellen examined her gorgeous Manny. I'm not going to say it. Good. I threw her a grateful look. If only I'd asked Ethan yesterday at lunch, everyone would calm down. Including me. As we were wrapping things up at the nail salon, I had the urge to tell the girls about the game Chris and I had started last night, but decided against it. What would be the point? I'd done Chris a favor last night and would do him another tonight. No big deal. It's not like any of it was real, no matter how much fun we were having. I strode into the boathouse, stressed out to maximum capacity. After work, I'd hurried to blissfully bridal, as directed, tried on the strapless red bridesmaid dress, and held my breath as Katya zipped it up. I let out a grateful whoosh at its perfect fit, and when Katya approved it, I thought things might finally be going my way. Until I received the following text from Chris. "Hi, honey. If your plans change or you get done early, come join John and me for dinner at the boathouse. Heard on the radio they have an awesome reggae band playing there tonight." That's right. At the boathouse. Why in the world did Chris have to choose the very same restaurant where I'd be meeting Ethan when I, myself, hadn't been there in years? Since it required more than jeans and a t-shirt, it had never made George's list of where we should eat out. So what if the radio says the band's supposed to be cool? I needed to get to know Ethan in peace without a very hot temptation distracting me. Instead of responding to Chris, I called Ethan to beg and plead that we eat somewhere else, anywhere else, and got his voicemail each of the 5 times I called. I mean, really, how could I date a man who turns his cell phone off when I might need to contact him in emergencies such as these? Determined to enjoy my time with Ethan and not let Chris's probable presence at the restaurant divert my attention, I strode into the boathouse wearing a white dress that hugged the new curves I'd decided to embrace. I'd splurged on 2 dresses last Sunday while shopping for the rehearsal dinner, and this was one of them. True, white wasn't slimming, but whatever. With my dark hair and light skin, Rach said it gave me a Greek goddess kind of look. Who would argue with that kind of compliment? The expression on Ethan's face when he saw me made it worth the small fortune it cost. "Gina." Ethan planted a quick kiss on my cheek, then his dark eyes moved up and down my body. "Wow." "Thanks." I reveled in the attention since I'd never gotten that reaction from George. Not even when we'd first started dating. "You look nice yourself." And he did. His black blazer stretched across his broad chest perfectly and complemented his dark and stunning features. "Shall we get seated?" He looked thrown for a moment, guess seeing me dressed up differed a tad from the business suit I'd worn to lunch. And I took that as a good sign. He approached the podium, greeted the man in the suit behind it, and gave his last name. As the host led us to a table inside by the fireplace, he tossed a very obvious second glance my way, and I made a mental note to take Rach with me clothes shopping from now on. Windows along the back wall allowed an easy view of the river beyond the deck where the band had already begun playing. The thrumming beat and soothing vibrations made me wish we'd been seated outside. Cozy in here by the fire. Ethan lifted the leather-bound wine menu. "This is my favorite table, so I reserved it for us." Impressed by his thoughtfulness, I tilted my head. "How sweet of you." Ethan perused the wine list. "Should we order a bottle?" I checked my watch. Less than 2 hours until I needed to be home, and I had to drive. Actually, I'm meeting a friend later, so just 1 glass for me. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Tonight? I thought you were free." "Free until 7:45. I kept my voice cheery since he seemed a little irritated. "We'll have to plan a full evening out soon." His gaze flicked back to the list. "Funny, I thought we had." Make that very irritated. My stomach clenched. Why had I said yes to drinks with Chris? The sound of Ms. H.R.'s husky laugh echoed through my mind. Oh, right, that's why. The seafood linguine looks good. I'd considered asking about Italian history, but things hadn't plummeted that low. Yet. "The seafood linguine is excellent." He nodded, but kept his eyes glued to the menu as if to express I was still in the doghouse. "I've had it before. The Cajun jambalaya is good as well." On the last sentence, his tone seemed a tad friendlier, so I relaxed a little. Thanks for the tip. Good evening, I'm Marcia. A dark-haired woman appeared wearing a stern expression. I'll be your server this evening. May I start you off with a cocktail? Ethan raised a brow at me. Just because I can't stay late doesn't mean we won't have a great time. I doubted Chris would make a big deal about a short evening since he'd taken my being late to his business dinner in stride. I turned to the waitress, who scowled at me, fine, take Ethan's side, and asked her to recommend a Pinot Grigio. I ignored the urge to put a fake Italian accent on Grigio since Ethan hadn't realized I'd been joking last time. Ethan ordered a gin and tonic, then the waitress disappeared with one last hostile side glance. Whatever, lady. I'm going to order the butternut squash with cream sauce. Forget low-calorie salads in my new dress size. My taste buds called the shots tonight. What about you? The Cajun jumbo. He stopped mid-sentence and his dark brows came together. Is that your friend from work? Huh? My eyes immediately darted to where Ethan cast his gaze and my heart froze. Solid ice, I tell you, as my pretend boyfriend strolled in looking sexier than ever in dark slacks and a blue-collared shirt that made his eyes stand out from across the room. Even my grouchy waitress gave Chris the once-over as the host led him toward the back deck. As if sensing me watching, Chris's head suddenly angled my way and our eyes locked. The ice in my chest burst into flames, heating my cheeks and forcing me to turn away. Why did I care if Chris saw me with Ethan? I was on a date. So what? I got enough of him the first time. Ethan's tone was flat. Did you tell him you'd be here? No, of course not. My face burned and had to be bright red, even though this wasn't my fault. I heard he was coming here with a friend, though. I called you several times, but you didn't pick up. You did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell. I put the phone on mute for a meeting, then forgot to put the ringer back on. Sorry about that. No worries. Feeling awkward, I ducked behind the menu and rolled my eyes to the ceiling, cursing the boathouse for announcing their fabulous band on the radio. Here comes our waitress. Let's order. After the server left with our dinner selections, conversation was a bit stilted, as if he felt as uncomfortable with Chris being here as I did. This wasn't fair to Ethan, but it's not like I wanted Chris to show up. I mean, what control did I have over where Chris chose to eat lunch and dinner? That'd be none. Finally, I asked about the fall of the Roman Empire. Desperate times called for desperate topics. It perked Ethan's mood considerably, even though the Italian history rehash made me want to take a siesta. As we ate our salads, I had the strong urge to look out the window for Chris and had to force myself not to. Finally, I excused myself to the bathroom. I needed to get a grip before I completely ruined my chance with Ethan. Once I'd fanned myself in front of the mirror, reapplied my lipstick, and calmed my heartbeat down to a dull trot, I headed back out. Chris stood outside, waiting for me. I can't believe you're cheating on me. Chris folded his arms over his chest. Was he serious? Because he actually looked kind of serious. For real? His gorgeous blue eyes squinted. What can you possibly see in that guy? I bit my bottom lip. Did he really want to know? He's nice, successful, attractive. His brows quirked together. And I'm not? No, you totally are. My cheeks flushed at how quickly I'd said that. Why then? He shook his head, reached for my shoulders, and bent down so his eyes were level with mine. When I'd do anything for you. My stomach fell to the floor. I mean, the way he'd said anything took my mind to all kinds of places, and I really wanted to get that promise in writing. The air stilled between us as we searched each other's eyes until, finally, I pressed my palms to his very solid chest. Honey, it meant nothing to me and will never happen again. He gave me a suspicious side glance. How do I know that? Guess you'll just have to trust me. My fingers brushed his cheek and his icy blue eyes simmered. I'll see you in a bit. When I turned to go, he held my arm, his eyes darkening.
"You look gorgeous, by the way, as always."
Warmth flooded through me. "Thanks." His eyes trailed over me one last time.
"Since you're already here, let's meet out front at 8 instead of your place."
Before I had a chance to respond, he backed away and disappeared into the men's room. I grabbed the wall as I swayed a little. Even though we were role-playing, the exchange frazzled my nerves as if we were a couple who'd had our first fight and then made up. Intense would be a good word for the whirlwind that just happened between us. Not wanting Chris to find me standing there when he came out, I inhaled deeply, then headed back to my date. Chapter 7. Saying goodnight to Ethan had been all kinds of awkward because he wanted to walk me to my car, but I wasn't going to the car because my next date was already here, on the back deck, and oh yeah, Ethan didn't like him. Finally, I made up an excuse about needing to use the restroom again, gave him a brief hug, man those muscles were firm, and assured him that he didn't need to wait for me. It had to be one of the oddest departures in history. After touching up my lipstick and fluffing my hair in the ladies' room, I slipped out onto the back deck, where the band's music pulsed through me in a vibrating hum. Man, the radio was right. They were good. Chris and John sat at a table near the railing and were just paying their bill. I adjusted the purse strap on my shoulder. "Hi, guys."
"Hi."
Chris finished signing his bill, then gestured between John and me.
"You remember Gina from last night?"
John gaped in a way that said he barely recognized me from last night. Definitely had to thank Rach for her fashion advice. The three of us headed out of the restaurant together, then strolled down the sidewalk, passing old-fashioned buildings housing various restaurants, a candy shop, toy store, comedy club, and more. I loved the charm of Old Sac. It made me all warm and gooey inside. We chit-chatted along the way. Well, mostly John did the talking. Chris was actually acting kind of aloof, a first for him.
"This is where we're meeting everyone."
John stopped in front of a brick building with wooden doors painted green and white around the small window panes.
"O'Malley's."
Recognizing the Irish pub, my smile spread wide and I turned to Chris. "Isn't this the place we all came after the company picnic last year? That was such a blast." Despite my excitement over the fun memory, he merely nodded without meeting my eyes and held open the door for John and me to go through first. I bit my lip and frowned, wondering what was up with Chris's odd behavior.
"There they are."
John led the way, waving to a guy and two girls who swiveled toward us in their high-back bar stools.
"Hey, Bill, Wanda, Tina."
My shoulders tensed as Chris and I approached the table and Ms. H.R.'s long legs, one crossed over the other, came into view. Could her skirt be any shorter? Yeah, we were out of the office, but still. Bill waved immediately.
"Pull up a chair."
We ordered some beers, then joined them at the table. Not surprisingly, Ms. H.R. invited Chris to sit next to her. Whatever. He was barely talking to me anyway. Not sure what I did, but John sat on the other side of me and seemed friendly enough. It turned out John and I had both gone to school at Sac State, and we exchanged stories about a couple of mutual professors we'd had in general studies. He majored in sociology, having no idea what he wanted to do, and somehow ended up in software sales. I laughed at his tales of changing multiple careers after graduation, since I'd been interested in accounting practically since birth. A couple hours later, Wanda started yawning and suggested we call it a night. Outside the entrance, we parted ways with the others, leaving Chris and me alone. We ambled down the sidewalk, passing the first block without talking until I decided to break the silence. I liked getting to know everyone. Well, with the exception of Ms. H.R., who clearly had the hots for my pretend boyfriend and wore skirts that should be rated R. You're going to be working with some great people, so that should put you at ease that the change will go smoothly. Did you have a good time? He shrugged.
"Good enough."
I didn't want to press into his private business, even as his pretend girlfriend, but I'd never seen him so quiet before. "Something's clearly bothering you. Did you get a hate text at dinner or something?" The corner of his mouth tipped up.
A what?
Bad news? I don't know. Seeing him smile a bit felt refreshing, and as we passed a bar I'd never been to, I suddenly had an idea. Want to get another drink?
You mean now?
Come on. Being brave, I laced my arm through his. My treat, honey. Both corners of his mouth turned up now.
In that case...
We exchanged a smile as Chris held the door open for me, then we got drinks at the bar and took them to a round green vinyl booth in the back corner. Not too many people were there, an older couple facing each other on bar stools, a young guy by the front window drinking alone and texting on his phone, and a few guys at a table with their eyes glued to some sports replay on TV. But not completely dead for a Thursday. I glanced around and spotted an actual jukebox on the back wall, no joke, and I made Chris get some change from the bar while I eyed the songs. No songs were going on right now, so we controlled the playlist. Sweet. The jukebox, it turns out, had a wide selection of music, current and old. I pressed my lips together. What are we feeling?
Something upbeat. I'll pick.
Wearing a smirk, he bumped his hip against mine, moving me aside so he could make the selection. I gasped, "Oh, no way." I shoved my shoulder into his arm, since he was a bit taller than me, inching myself in front of the glass to view the options, and the battle over the buttons began. The back-and-forth nudging didn't last long, but I found myself breathless from the feel of Chris rubbing against me. We'd never done that in the office. I won. Though I'm guessing he let me because he's like 6 feet and in shape and I'm 5'6" and, well, not. I quickly chose an album by The Fray. Seconds later, the slow and steady piano notes of Never Say Never rang out, and I slid back into our rounded booth ahead of him, a victorious smile plastered across my face. "Thanks for letting me decide, honey. You rock my world."
Letting? You have a strangely broad definition of that word.
Scooching in beside me, Chris brought the brown bottle to his lips, taking a swig of beer as we listened to the heartfelt lyrics.
This song is depressing. How can you stand it?
Under the table, I bounced my knee into his in protest. It's romantic. He listened to a few more lines, set his bottle on the table, then scoffed.
See? Depressing. They're fighting.
So? I enjoyed the angst and agony in the singer's voice. All the tension building up meant an increased awe factor when they got back together in the end. The song finishes on a happy note with them working things out. It's a great choice. Thanks for agreeing with me.
I see you have a broad definition of the word agreeing as well.
Spinning the bottle between his palms, he shook his head.
Relationships shouldn't be that difficult.
I couldn't help but laugh a little. How would you know? Oops, had I said that out loud? A perplexed look crossed his face.
What's that supposed to mean?
I shrugged, not wanting to answer. We'd just gotten our light banter back, and I didn't want to lose it. After all, his last day at work was tomorrow, and I didn't want us to part on a bad note. But then again, he had asked, and I'd had several beers at the pub prior to this, so it suddenly seemed like a good idea to say what I thought. It's just, you date around. A lot. Instead of being bothered or insulted, his eyes danced.
You've been paying attention to who I date? That's cute, sweetie.
My cheeks heated, and I tried to play it off by taking a sip of my Midori sour, but it only made him laugh harder. I shook my head. I wasn't paying specific attention or anything. It's pretty obvious to everyone in the office that you hop from date to date. I mean, you never bring the same girl to a company event twice. He raised his brows, finished off his beer, then patted the table as he pushed to his feet.
You want another?
Sure. If I kept putting my foot in my mouth, maybe it would dull the embarrassment. So he dated a lot. Why was I making a big deal about it? I rolled my eyes at my unintended jealousy, downed the rest of my bright green drink, then bit the cherry off its stem. The sweet maraschino flavor burst in my mouth as I chewed on the squooshy, artificially preserved fruit. Glancing over at Chris as he leaned against the bar, I decided, had been a bad idea. Warmth flooded through me as I stared long enough to notice how his back tapered down to a narrow waist above very snug slacks. Lucky pants. Wait, was I seriously checking Chris out right now? I tore my eyes away, thrust the cherry stem between my teeth, and tried to work the ends over each other to distract myself from the very real urge I had to wrap my arms around his waist. Maybe these weird feelings were because his last day was coming. In fact, this could be the last time we hang, ever. A pang jolted through me. While I threw myself deep into stem in a knot mode, he returned, setting a glass filled with my deliciously green drink in front of me. What were we talking about? The weather. I removed the knotted stem and adjusted the soft white strap on my shoulder. How nice the weather is for December in Northern California. Right. He took a sip of beer, leaned back in the booth, then turned his baby blues toward me. You're a fairly amusing girlfriend, you know that? Tingles shot down my neck and over my shoulders. So we are still together. The way you ignored me over drinks earlier, I suspected I'd been dumped. He picked at the label on his bottle. John seemed to be keeping you pretty entertained. I frowned. Yes, but he's not who I plan to spend time with tonight. His arms spread out across the booth, his hand bumping up against my shoulder. It appeared you spent time with quite a few people tonight. Ouch. Maybe that's why he'd been acting cold. Ethan, I thought we resolved that outside the bathroom, I joked. With an unreadable expression, he stared at the ripped-up pieces of paper on the table, then lifted his lashes. You like him? Come on, Chris. I squirmed in my seat. I'd looked forward to playing girlfriend/boyfriend with him all day. Actually, to be honest, probably since last night when he asked me to come with him. And this was probably our last night together. Why did he have to ruin it by asking questions I didn't know the answers to? Why couldn't we just forget Ethan, work, and making sure I fell for a guy who could commit? So much pressure. I'd rather relax and have a good time with Chris. Gaze into his hypnotic blue eyes. Leaning forward, he nudged my arm with his wrist. Answer me. I shook my head, then sucked down Midori through a tiny red straw. I kept my voice light. I already promised never to cheat again. What more do you want? Oh, he would chill out and play this game with me, even if I had to coax him into it. He studied me a moment, then slid toward me so that our thighs were flush against each other. He slipped his arm behind my shoulders, so he practically cradled me. Truth or dare? Wrong game. And was it hot in here? I breathed in the scent of his spicy cologne, then gulped. I started truth or dare, so you can't take a turn until I ask you something. Sorry, those are the rules, and we always follow the rules. He leaned closer. So close that our mouths were almost touching, the scent of pale ale burning my senses. You played your turn last night. I swallowed, wondering if he realized how close he'd gotten. He had to realize it, right? Not that I wanted him to move. You're bluffing, I don't remember that. He brushed a curl away from my face, his fingers skimming my jaw and shooting tingles down my neck. You asked me about the girl who broke my heart at work. Oh, right, her. I bit my lip. I did. Finally, you're remembering. His baby blues flashed, and it amazed me how much they stood out even in the dim lighting. So, tell me the truth. The man's voice on the jukebox kept wailing, I'm in over my head, as if he were crying out the words solely for me. You know I never choose truth. He tilted his head down and lowered his lashes. I'll bet I can make you. I sucked in a breath and my eyes dropped to his mouth. Not possible. He paused, mere centimeters away from me, and it was like the world stopped. Truth or kiss? My belly fluttered immediately, but even in my emotional haze, I knew a kiss would be a colossal mistake. So I grabbed onto a lifeline. Second rule in Truth or Dare, no bodily contact with someone else. Exactly. Chris smiled, his other hand dropped to my waist, and his fingers curled against me. Someone else. No rule against bodily contact with each other. A freaking loophole. Why did I have the feeling he'd been waiting to play that card?
What's it gonna be, Gina?
His eyes searched mine. Truth or kiss? Although both words echoed in my head, there wasn't a choice. I couldn't back down, wouldn't back down, didn't want to back down. Tingles danced in my belly. Like I said, I never choose truth. Blame the Midoris, blame the sappy music, but my vow went to the wayside. As soon as I made a slight move forward, his lips captured mine. Soft, warm, amazing. A completeness I'd never known washed through me as our mouths held each other. Energy pulsed between us, then burst throughout my entire body. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I recognized this was wrong, that I had to pull away. But it was like an invisible rope pulled me to him, and I felt helpless against it. Connecting with Chris on this level felt exhilarating and overwhelming at the same time. His hand threaded through the back of my hair, then his lips parted, and his tongue brushed against mine. Oh, wow. Wow. Electric darts jolted through me, and my heart pounded wildly. Completely lost in him, I swayed and had to grab the table with my other hand to keep steady. Chris Bradley was kissing me, drinking me in as if he couldn't get enough. The feeling was mutual, and each taste of him set every nerve in my body on alert. Why had I waited so long to do this? Wait, why had I waited so long? Oh, right. George. Commitment. My pattern of picking guys who wanted nothing to do with it. Realizing I'd done exactly what had screwed me over the first time, I pulled away abruptly, shocking him and myself as well. The sudden emptiness felt like a cold rush between us and left my chest hollow. We stared at each other as we both fought to catch our breath. I really, seriously needed to start picking truth. "You're home late?" Kristen sat on the couch and twisted toward the front door as I opened it. "You're up late." The cab pulled away from the curb behind me, and I turned, shut the door, and locked it. I'd have to get my car tomorrow, but there's no way I was legal to drive after the number of drinks I'd had tonight. She pushed up the sleeves of her flannel pajamas. "Where were you?" "Out." Since she had an early routine, I'd been hoping she'd be fast asleep and I wouldn't have to explain the horrible mistake I'd made tonight. "With who, Gina?" She patted the cushion next to her. "I talked to Ethan earlier, so you obviously weren't with him. Great dress, by the way." "Thanks." My world may be collapsing, but at least my new dress was a hit. Chirp, chirp. My phone went off inside my purse. I checked the screen and it was from Chris. "Are you home yet? We need to talk." Oh no, we so didn't need to talk. I barely had the strength to get out of there. It was an insane attraction, that's all there was to it. Heaps and tons of extremely hardcore attraction. Who could blame me for the slip? He was irresistible, like cookie dough ice cream, only lathered with whipped cream and hot fudge as well. How was I supposed to hold out against someone that enticing? I dropped onto the couch and moaned. "Help me, I kissed Chris tonight." Kristen plopped her feet up on the coffee table and wiped her hands together. "Your friend from work? Why?" The reason was so embarrassing, but at this point I may as well be honest. "Because he makes me feel all tingly inside." She leaned her elbow against the couch. "I suspected this would happen. Gina, if you like him so much, then what's the problem?" My head hung, stunned at what she'd said. I liked Chris? As in, liked him? On most levels, I already knew that, but to have her say it aloud meant I couldn't deny it anymore. I brought my thighs to my chest and buried my nose between my knees. "He's a total girl hopper, and I do this, Kristen. I fall for guys who don't want commitment. I'm like a bug drawn to the light, and I can't stop myself even though it's going to kill me. Or at least break my heart and keep me single the rest of my life." She blew out a breath and shook her head. "I hate to state the obvious, but what about Ethan? He's amazing, and as part of the female species, you have to feel drawn to him. So why haven't you invited him to the wedding?" Keeping my nose to my knees, I threw my hands in the air. "I don't know." Why don't you tell me? You're the counselor, right? My head whipped up and I pleaded with my eyes. Surely, as a family counselor, she had insight into relationship dynamics and knew how to work it. I mean, she selected Jake, who seemed to be the definition of perfect. Except for the hardship of him wanting her all the time, because that must bite. Not. The first step of getting what you want is knowing what you want. Her voice seemed distant, almost as if she were talking to herself. Gina, what do you want? Her tone sounded annoyingly clinical, but at least the answer was obvious. I want to marry a man I adore, have kids, and live happily ever after. I'm not interested in casual dating, and I repeat, I do not want to spend another decade with Mr. Wrong. Kristen shrugged. Then you have to break your bad dating pattern. You're attracted to the wrong type of guy, one who'll never give you the relationship you want. Choosing Mr. Wrong, as you put it, is comfortable because it's what you're used to. But you're in control of your future. Keep making the same choices in life, and you'll keep seeing the same results. Ew, was this what therapy was like? All in my face like that? No wonder I'd never gone. Let's say you're right, Dr. Kristen. Can you translate all that human psyche jargon into what I'm supposed to do? She wrinkled her nose. Don't call me Dr. Kristen. It makes me sound like a radio talk show host with a degree from La La Land University. She shuddered. What I'm suggesting, basically, is to ignore the tinglies you feel around Chris. They're leading you astray. Easier said than done, depending on the quantity of Midori sours consumed. I lowered my lashes. Even on our best day, George and I'd never had a tenth of the chemistry Chris and I do. It's also fun and easy with him. Raising her brows at me, she said, Except it won't be fun when he moves on to another girl next month. You said that's what he does, right? Yes. My body felt numb, knowing I had to be strong. I caved once, but I won't let it happen again. Good. She gave a terse nod. Call Ethan up first thing in the morning and ask him to be your date at Ellen's wedding. He's a phenomenal guy, definitely wants to be married, have a family, the whole shebang. Everything you want. You do like him, right? Tears burned my eyes. Why did finding love have to mean fighting against what you feel? Sure, I like him. He's really nice. Then make the healthy choice and pick Ethan. Break your pattern. Unless you want a broken heart or to spend the next 10 years trying in vain to get your playboy to commit. I'd rather eat granola. Or your smoothies. My mouth twitched until I spotted an empty carton of ice cream on the coffee table. Kristen, what's with... Alrighty then. Good night and see you in the morning. She swept off the couch and trotted to her room, shutting the door behind her. Whatever was wrong, I hoped Kristen knew she could talk to me about it. Maybe she'd already gone over what it was with Ellen, so she didn't need to rehash it again. With my heart heavy, I dragged my feet to the front door and double-checked that I'd locked it. Then I switched off the living room lights and padded toward my room. Chirp, chirp. A flick of the screen exposed a text from Chris. You must be home now, which means you're avoiding me. What I can't figure out is why. Whatever the reason you never picked truth, you answered my question anyway. If you really liked this Ethan guy, you wouldn't have let me kiss you. Gina, let's go out for real. You and me. What do you say? I sat down on my bed, an ache in my chest as I stared at the screen, then tapped my response. I can't. Chirp, chirp. Closing my eyes and inhaling deeply, I opened it. Why? Suddenly, my eyes burned and the ache in my chest grew because I knew why. And it had nothing to do with Ethan or George. Chris wasn't the only one who'd had his heart broken. Freshman year in college, I had a whirlwind romance with Derek. He was the first guy I'd ever fallen for, and I jumped in with both feet. 2 months later, he'd moved on to another girl in my dorm, leaving me in excruciating agony as if someone had sliced my heart open with a dull blade. I'd been naive enough to think first love would last forever. George had come along a few months later, and he'd been my safety guy. Instead of the roller coaster romance, George had been slow and steady. I'd loved George and completely thought we'd get married one day, but I hadn't been in love with George. Not the way I was starting to feel about Chris. My emotions soared high with Chris, which meant the anguish would be 100-fold when it fell apart. Which it would, of course, especially with his penchant for playing the field. I turned off the light and crawled into bed, still wearing my pretty dress. As I pulled the covers up around me, my cell screen lit up and I texted Chris back. "I'm sorry, I just can't." Painfully masochistic, I slid my fingers across my phone and searched the web until I found Never Say Never by The Fray. The first time through brought tears to my eyes as I remembered every smile, every touch, every kiss from tonight. Chirp, chirp. The sound stunned my heart and my throat went dry as I clicked it open. "Come on, honey. I didn't break up with you, remember? So don't break up with me." Automatically, my finger poised to reply. Every part of me wanted to give in and keep pretending. Because that's what we were doing, pretending we were together. I had to force myself to close out the screen, which tortured me to do so. As I listened to Never Say Never over and over again, the couple always came together in the end. Because it was only a song, not real life. Chapter 8. Breakfast with Kristen the next morning was all kinds of weird. I mean, she ignored her oatmeal and ate my chocolate puff cereal instead. When I inquired as to what went wrong in her world to make her fall off her health kick, hoped the cookie dough dare didn't start it, she claimed to be late for work and took off. I kept my office door closed all morning at work, but I knew when Chris showed up because he responded to the dozen group emails with subject lines such as "Good luck," "We'll miss you," and "Rock on, stud." That last one had been from Melinda Morgan in customer service, who flirted with all the hot guys in the office. A group email came from Human Resources soon after, stating that any comments with sexual intent or innuendo were not proper for the workplace. Oh, please, tell that to our biggest competitor's HR manager. Since I was coordinating Chris's going-away party, I had to arrive early to pay the caterers and show them where they were setting up in the conference room. I asked Ginger Nielsen to come help me in case Chris arrived before the party and wanted to talk. He didn't. Most likely he was slammed tying up loose ends on his last day, but possibly he'd moved on to his next date. The thought made my stomach clench. "Where's Ellen today?" Ginger twisted her neck in my direction as she set plates at the beginning of the conference table for the buffet-style lunch. Tomorrow's the wedding, so she took the day off. Tension filled my shoulders, and I kept flicking glances toward the entrance as people filed in to serve themselves up a freebie lunch. Then she and Henry are honeymooning in Hawaii. Which island? Kauai, South Shore, I think. I ducked my head as Chris strode through the doorway, hoping Ginger blocked his view of me. They'll be there 2 weeks. Sounds divine. She drawled her words, completely oblivious to my distress. An island vacation is exactly what I need. Manning the reception desk is pure exhaustion. Rich Woodward said he has his eye on me, though, so I'm hoping that means a promotion in the near future. Ginger had a college degree and had taken the receptionist position to get her foot in the door. She worked hard and knew her stuff. I could definitely see her moving up as she paid her dues. I'll cross my fingers that Rich advances you soon. As if his ears were burning, Rich Woodward, the president of our software company, Woodward Systems Corporation, strolled in. Rumor had it he fought to keep Chris here and wasn't too happy that he'd gone over to the dark side. Still, once the room was full, he made a short speech wishing Chris all the best in his future endeavors. Then he excused himself for a meeting across town. A meeting during the lunch hour? Knowing Rich, not likely. Guess I'm lucky he showed up at all. Chris had leaned over my shoulder and whispered the words in my ear. Embarrassed that he'd snuck up and caught me off guard when I'd been trying to hide, I felt my face light on fire. I'm sure he's just sorry to see you go. True enough. He studied my face as if trying to gauge what to say, then he sighed when I looked away.
Have you come to celebrate my departure as you kick me to the curb? His voice sounded playful, but the words weren't funny. Of course not. Chris, the second floor's really gonna miss you. Melinda Morgan slid up beside Chris and bit her perfectly painted lip. That pink color had to be all-day wear because of its midday vibrancy. It went disgustingly well with her blonde hair and black dress, too. She looked camera-ready every day, and I shuddered at the amount of time that must take each morning. We want to take you out for drinks tonight, so don't you dare say you have plans. No. He laughed good-naturedly. That sounds fun. I'm in. Well then, she tapped her finger against his red tie. Prepare yourself for the best send-off of all time. I'll try, Mel. Thanks. His baby blues lit up as he gave her a genuine smile, then he turned to me. How about it, Gina? Drinks tonight? Oh, Truth be told, it seemed as though they'd forgotten me standing there. I wondered if this we going out for drinks tonight was just Mel, but it's not like I could tag along to find out. I can't, guys, sorry. Rehearsal for Ellen's wedding, then dinner after. Mel's lips pursed as if mentioning the wedding were a personal slight. She could be sensitive sometimes, but I knew Ellen hadn't invited many people from work due to the cost. Not sure how late Ellen's dinner will run, but call if you can meet up with us after. I'm sure we'll still be out. Have fun. I took the opportunity to step away and fill a plate with food. Most people had shaken Chris's hand, loaded up on grub, then taken it back to their desks. The conference room was a good size, but couldn't fit more than 20. Once they'd bid Chris farewell, they disappeared to enjoy the rest of their lunch hour. For some reason, even with the awkwardness, I felt obligated to stay. I'd paid the caterers, and Rach had agreed to do cleanup since I'd organized. But knowing how sad Chris seemed about moving on from a place where he loved to work, I wanted to be here for him, even if from a distance. So I picked a vacant chair at the end of the table and chatted with Dawn Parsons, the newest addition to the sales team. Until Chris left, that is. Dawn had been assigned to train the new guy, replacing Chris on Monday. After lunch, I gave Chris a hug that was painfully hard to keep brief. His spice-scented cologne brought back memories from last night, mainly the warmth of his lips against mine, and I wanted to sink into him and bury my head in his chest. Like you said, this is a positive move. They're lucky to have you. His head turned toward me. Thanks, Gina. Since my throat was closing up, I let go, backed up, then all but sped down the hall. I pressed the elevator button and the down arrow lit. Waiting for the doors to open, I blinked back tears. It was better this way. I'd find the lasting relationship I was looking for, and he'd find the next flavor of the month. Maybe Mel. She was pretty, seemed interested, and it would no longer break his rule to go out with her. My stomach roiled, and I forced the picture of the two of them together out of my mind. Ding! The elevator settled onto the floor, then the doors opened. I stepped in, leaned back against the oak-lined side wall, and tapped the first floor button, wishing this day were over. The doors slowly moved toward each other, then jerked to a stop when a white-sleeved arm thrust between them. Chris stepped in. Going down? Straightening, I watched as Chris hit the first floor button, then I quickly dabbed the corners of my eyes before he leaned back and stole a glance at me. Weren't there still people at your party? Not many. His tone was even, and he stood as straight as I did, both of us facing the elevator doors. Given how stiffly we stood, we could probably have fallback careers as palace guards. You should join us for drinks after the rehearsal dinner, Gina. At least consider it. I had considered it, and a shredded heart wasn't on my wish list. Not tonight. His feet shifted. Tomorrow night, then? Chris. I sighed, fighting for the strength to keep turning him down. Tomorrow night's the wedding. So? I'm taking Ethan. If I ever got around to asking him, that is. He made a bemused sound. You going to tell him we kissed last night? No. I growled as the elevator wiggled to a halt. That was a mistake. The twin doors opened and Chris followed me into the hall. Look, Gina.
He quieted a moment as my accounting assistant passed us in the hall with a curious glance.
I didn't sleep much last night, trying to figure out what has you worked up.
I'm not worked up. I tossed over my shoulder, my annoyed tone contradicting my words. I just don't want to go out with you. How many times do I have to say it? He followed me into my office and pushed the door shut.
If you didn't feel something for me, you wouldn't have kissed me. How difficult is it to pick truth instead? Not too hard.
I never pick truth. I spun around and faced him. Not even in middle school, which is the only other time I've played this ridiculous game.
Why?
He stepped forward, his voice turning gentle.
Why don't you ever pick truth?
I ached to tell him and struggled to keep myself in check as I remembered Kristen's psyche wisdom. Keep making the same choices in life and you'll keep seeing the same results. If I kept going for terminal bachelors, I'd be single forever. It's none of your business.
When it keeps me up at night, I think it is.
He plunged a hand through his hair.
Man, you can be so frustrating.
I tried not to show how jostled I felt by the first part of his confession. He'd been thinking about me. At night. So much that he couldn't sleep. I suppressed the urge to ask for details because, in the end, it wouldn't change anything. You can't make a player commit, no matter how much you may want him to. We've been friends for 5 years, Chris. Let's not end things like this. He shook his head.
You're right.
That had been too easy. I am?
Yes. We're not ending things like this.
Instead of leaving, he grabbed the back of a chair, twisted it so it faced the other, then sat down.
I've been thinking about what you said last night, that I hop from girl to girl.
I eyed the chair next to him as he gestured to it, but I refused to sit. And? He leaned back in the chair and laced his hands behind his head.
Why should that matter to you?
My face heated. It doesn't. His mouth curved upward.
Then why are you blushing?
Every irritated nerve in my body tightened. This may be your last day, but some of us still have work to do, so if you wouldn't mind. The smirk left his face and he leaned forward, elbows on his knees.
For 5 years, I watched you bring George to company parties and heard you guys were together for some time before that.
I hugged my belly. You must think I'm pretty pathetic for staying with someone so long when he obviously wasn't serious about me. He shook his head as if I weren't getting it.
I'm thankful George didn't have his act together, because it means I still have a chance.
Fireworks blasted off in my chest, causing my heart to pound.
Chris, when I heard you two had broken up, I wanted to ask you out. But I didn't want to be a rebound, so I forced myself to wait, to give you time to get over him.
My legs threatened to give way, so I dropped into the chair. But you seem to play the field like you never want to settle down. He reached for my hand, tracing my palm in small circles until his baby blue eyes met mine.
I'd settled down for the right girl.
My pulse galloped. Oh? He took a deep breath.
My ex-girlfriend and I were together for 3 years.
That straightened my spine. Who? How? When? Stunned? Me? No, not much.
We went out in college and a couple years after we graduated.
He shook his head a little but continued tracing my hand.
You seem surprised.
Well, yeah. I pressed my lips together and fought to make sense of what he'd just told me. You're like a dateaholic.
I date, sure.
He shrugged, his hand still holding mine.
But if it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to lead a girl on by pretending it's going somewhere when it's not.
I stared at him, processing everything I'd just learned. How could it feel wrong with that many girls? His eyes held mine.
Because they weren't you.
My heart flipped and an overwhelming rush of emotion flowed through me. Joy, passion, fear, way too much fear. Phantom feelings of excruciating heartbreak flooded my chest, twisting and gnawing at me. Self-preservation kicked in and I yanked my hand away. I'm dating Ethan. But you wouldn't have kissed me if I had a lot to drink, okay? I stood and threw my arms up. I've told you no 1,000 times. Why can't you take a hint? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. Instead of putting my arms around him like I wanted to, I bit out a laugh. I just told you I'd choose Ethan. Do you think it's right to encroach on another man's girl? His lips thinned, and he slowly rose to his feet. No, of course not. My hands clasped together in prayer position. Then please leave me alone. His blue eyes cooled as he pivoted to open the door. You got it. The door closed with a click behind him. While I breathed hard, conflicting feelings rolled through me. Run after him, let him go, beg him to see through my words and know it terrified me to risk being hurt again. My eyes burned and I brought my fist to my mouth as the first silent sob escaped, followed by another and another. Better to feel the pain now. I knew from my experience with Derek it would have been much worse down the road. Chirp, chirp. My phone called out to me as I was about to take my practice walk down the aisle with Henry's groomsman, Josh. Sorry. I unlaced my hand from his arm so I could get my phone from my purse and turn off the ringer. Wondering if it might be Chris, I took a breath and opened it up. George. Need you to meet with me. It's urgent, okay? I let out a breath. George had kept me hanging for a decade, and now he had the nerve to call something urgent? Whatever. I sent back my reply. I'll think about it. Everything all right? Josh looked down at me as I dropped my cell back in my handbag. Just groovy. I shouldn't have been sarcastic when Josh was just trying to be polite. But he was married with an adorable baby. What did he know of the traumatic plight of the singles? Thanks for asking, though. The rehearsal went smoothly. Wait here, step there, nothing too complex. Until Rach gave her maid of honor speech and surprised us all, not in a good way, by bringing her miniature beagle out for what can best be described as a live prop. I'd been dragging since lunch, but witnessing the depth of Rachel's affection for her dog had me putting a hand to my mouth to hold the laughter in. Oh no, she didn't. Oh yes. Kristen raised her brows, nodding. She did. After Rachel's heartfelt speech about how Ellen and Henry owed their marriage to her dog, Chester, Ellen pulled Rach aside and went a little ballistic. Okay, a lot, actually. Ellen's hands fisted at her sides. How could you bring a dog to my rehearsal dinner? It's not a dog, Rach explained with exaggerated patience. It's Chester. If it hadn't been for my asking you to babysit him and his choking on your hairbrush, you never would have met Henry at that vet clinic. It's dog sit, not babysit, and he had hair from my hairbrush in his throat, not the actual brush itself. Ellen closed her eyes and took a breath. I'm very appreciative of Chester. You know that. But how could you bring a canine to a 5-star restaurant? He only popped in to say hi, and my mom took him away 5 minutes later, so I fail to see what the big deal is. Then Rach gestured to the groomsman, Josh. He brought his baby here. Why can't I bring mine? Because his boy is human. Ellen's voice rose several octaves, then she took a deep breath. Please tell me you don't plan to bring Chester to the wedding. Of course not. Rach scrunched up her nose. My mom's attending the wedding, so it's not like she can get him and take him home again. Although if you'd allowed him to be your ring bearer like I suggested, I would have hired someone to babysit him. Kristen and I decided this was the perfect time to hit the bar and knock back a couple of tequila shots. I licked the spot between my thumb and index finger, then shook some salt on it. How was your day, Kristen? One word. She licked the salt on her hand, swallowed the shot of tequila, then bit on a lime. Her mouth puckered. Sucky. Bet mine was worse. I mimicked the same motions, the smooth liquid warming my insides. You go first. A minute later, she turned over her second shot glass. I broke up with Jake today. What? I tossed back my second shot, then shook my head. No way. That's awful. Ellen's going to freak if you ruin her head count. We both burst out laughing. How about you? Kristen accepted the glasses of water we'd ordered from the bartender and handed one to me. "You know my friend from work?" I pulled at the back of my head to stretch my neck from side to side. Apparently, he's not a player. He even had a girlfriend in college for 3 years, and he asked me out. She tilted her head, running a finger over the rim of her water glass. "So, what did you do about it?" I sobered up immediately. I told him I was taking Ethan to the wedding and kicked him out of my office. "Good call." She made a face that showed she thought the opposite. "How'd he react?" "He left." Remembering the look on his face made me feel sick to my stomach. On the bright side, he's out with a gorgeous blonde from our office as we speak. "Well, Gina," she raised her water glass high in the air, "here's to our sucky day. The absolute suckiest." I lifted my glass and clinked it into hers. "To us." We sipped together, then Kristen stood and placed an arm around me. "We'd better get back to the bride. She's probably finished reaming Rach out by now. I'll let her know Jake's not coming and that you finally invited Ethan to the wedding." "I didn't ask him to the wedding." I rested my head on her shoulder as we walked. "Then why did you tell your friend?" Her eyes rounded as she saw mine fill with tears. "To make him go away." I blinked rapidly, then shrugged. I was scared. Her expression filled with compassion. "Oh, Gina, I've never fallen this hard for someone before." My voice shook as I admitted this. "Like I said, super duper sucky day." She gave me a tight squeeze. "Don't worry. We'll get what we want because we know what we want." Yeah, right. What I wanted was a lasting relationship with the man I loved. And I'd blown my chance. Chapter 9. All of us girls were drinking champagne on the satin couch of the honeymoon suite in the Victorian hotel where Ellen and Henry would be married in less than 30 minutes. The photographer had taken a gazillion pictures of us, the bride with her bridesmaids, over the last hour, and it was heaven to have a moment with just the girls. The room was a sea of perfume, flowers, and laughter. Truth or dare? Kristen, thankfully, had been looking at Ellen when she said this, but the words left a pang of regret inside me anyway. Ellen giggled as she tapped a finger to her cheek. "Since I'm wearing a white silk dress that cost more than one of my paychecks, I'll go with truth." Kristen's eyes squinted as if she were trying to think of something good. "By marrying Henry, what are you most looking forward to?" She responded immediately. "To he and I becoming family." "Aw," we gushed simultaneously. "Hear, hear." Kristen clinked her champagne flute to Ellen's, then with the rest of ours. "Truth or dare?" Ellen raised a finger, circling between the 3 of us bridesmaids, and finally pulled her trigger finger on Rach. Rach swallowed the champagne she just sipped. "I'll go dare." A wicked grin crossed Ellen's face. "Henry has a friend." "Truth!" Rach waved her arms in protest, nearly sloshing champagne onto her strapless red gown, and we all gasped. Seeing the dress had staved off danger, Ellen shook her head. "Too late, no changes. You chose dare. So, let me tell you about Wayne and the fantastic date you're going to have." Ellen's words echoed inside my mind, and I admired how she took charge of things. She didn't wait on life for herself or her friends. She made it happen. Suddenly, I realized my mistake with George and wished I could go back in time and change it. Urgent. It suddenly felt urgent to talk to George. The sooner the better. I'd call him tomorrow or stop by his place. My eyes widened as I realized I'd thought of the apartment as his place. I didn't even feel bitter about having to move out or drive to work. Kristen's place felt like home now, and I could most definitely see why Ellen had kept their childhood friendship going all these years. Kristen was rapidly becoming a very dear friend. "Hello, Gina?" Startled, I darted a look at Rach. "Did you say something? Wonder where her mind's at." She exchanged looks with the other girls. "I said truth or dare." I bit my lip and smiled. Dare, most definitely, always dare. Josh and I glided first down the aisle, just as we were taught the night before, and it felt surreal. Canon in D played as we walked down the lacy runner, and at the end stood Henry next to the best man, his cousin Mike. If I had to describe Henry in one word, I'd say proud. Second would be handsome. Very handsome in his black tux as he waited for his bride. Josh and I exchanged a small smile as we parted ways and stood on our respective sides at the front. Kristen and Adam came down the aisle next, looking ultra-glamorous together. Rach appeared a few seconds later, coming toward us with her hair held up on the side with rhinestone clips that matched the ones Kristen and I wore in our hair. She winked at Henry, who grinned back at her, and this is where things started to get very emotional. Ellen and Henry were getting married. Such an epic moment in their lives, committing themselves to one another, and we had the privilege to witness this beautiful ceremony. The music faded, and after a short pause, a string quartet rendition of Here Comes the Bride began playing. Everybody stood, pivoting toward the back of the room. Seconds later, Ellen appeared in her strapless white gown, elegant and stunning. With her mother at her side, they held hands as they drifted down the aisle together toward Henry. It wasn't until her mom lifted her veil that my eyes welled. Her mom dabbed a handkerchief to her eyes as she told Ellen how beautiful she looked, gave her a kiss on the cheek, then placed Ellen's hand in Henry's. As the minister began speaking, I gazed out into the audience at the sea of friends and family here to celebrate this special union. My eyes swept across the room, then jerked to a stop on Baby Blue's staring right at me. My body went on red alert. Chris? The way his lips turned up in the corners told me he knew I'd spotted him. But what was he doing here? I'd seen the guest list, and his name wasn't on it. Although it was obvious he'd caught me practically gaping at him, I moved my eyes around the rest of the room as I pretended his stare hadn't affected every part of me. Then I spotted Ethan. What the? Ethan looked hot in his suit, and he watched the bride and groom with a serious expression as they exchanged their vows. I swallowed the bundle of nerves creeping up my throat and turned my attention to Ellen as she placed a ring on Henry's finger. I hadn't invited Chris or Ethan. So what in the world were they doing here? Since I was a bridesmaid, it's not like I could slip out and avoid whatever confrontation they surely wanted. Maybe I could hide in a corner. Nobody would miss me in a corner, and I could pop out if Ellen needed me. "Now you may kiss your bride," the minister said. Henry gazed into Ellen's eyes with a look that seemed to come from his soul, then he leaned down and kissed her. The room erupted in clapping, and everyone stood. The minister wrapped up with a few sentences, and suddenly they were announced as Mr. and Mrs. Henry Holbrook III. Loud organ music blasted for the recessional, and Ellen retrieved her rose-filled bouquet from Rach before heading down the aisle with her husband. Rach and Mike followed, then Kristen and Adam, and Josh and I brought up the rear. As I passed by where Chris was sitting, it was all I could do to keep my eyes focused straight ahead, especially when I could physically feel his gaze on me. My heart raced, and I had a feeling all my bad decisions were about to catch up with me. While we were sitting at the head table, I found out that Kristen had invited Ethan to be her date to the wedding. Anxiety built inside me every time I caught a glimpse of him. And Chris, too, for that matter. One would have been tough enough to take, but both here together? I narrowed my eyes at Kristen. How could you? It didn't appear that this catastrophic problem she'd created had fazed her in the slightest. You had your chance with him. She shrugged. And I needed a date. I shook my head, unable to believe her callous attitude toward the misery she'd caused. She lifted her wine glass. Did Rach give you her dare yet? Or is she still leaving you hanging? Way to change the subject. Payback, Kristen. It will come. I'm sure it'll be worth it. Who wants to dance alone? With a tilt of her head and a smile, she sipped her Chardonnay. I guess Rach didn't want to dance alone either. With that, I followed to where she'd fixated her sights, then I gasped. Rach had her arm around Chris as she leaned down to tell him something at his table. She invited Chris to be her date tonight? She said she was going stag. You're the one who left the extra spot in the head count that needed to be filled. Kristen's tone was way too amused. Rach got up to make her way back to the head table, so I lifted my wine glass and approached her. You're supposed to be my friend. You're shooting lasers with your eyes, babe. Rach smirked, then reached around her groomsman for her own wine. Something up? Nothing. I stepped back a couple feet and lowered my voice so the entire wedding party wouldn't hear us. Just thought there wasn't anything going on between you and Chris? Rach sipped her Chardonnay. What makes you think something is? I hated that she didn't answer my question. He's your date to the wedding. I thought you were going stag. It's nice to have someone to dance with. She gave a light shrug. He told me he asked you out, but you turned him down. Having second thoughts? Yes. No. Gina, you're being ridiculous. Anyone with half a brain can see you're jealous that he's here with me, even though we just came as friends. Friends, right. Where had I heard that before? Finally, she let out a laugh. You really don't know. What? I bit out, exasperated. What don't I know? Why I brought Chris with me? She shook her head as if I were the most clueless person on the planet. I've worked down the hall from Chris for 5 years. I even flirted on occasion, albeit years ago. He had every opportunity to ask me out, to ask any of the girls in the office out. Any guesses why he didn't? Yes, I grabbed my neck and pressed down, trying to rub out the stress building up there. A girl from work broke his heart once. Now he doesn't date people from the office. The look she gave me made me feel 2 inches tall. Who do you think that girl was, Gina? I pulled my chin back. You can't mean me. She blew out a breath and threw her hands wide. Sometimes you are so dense. I was supposed to order his cake. What cake? For his going away party at work. I was next on the rotation, right? She waited a second to see if I was following along. You think I didn't have 10 minutes to call and order his cake and lunch myself? Actually, I did think that was odd at the time. Chris and I were talking about his new job, then Ellen's wedding, and somehow it came out that he knew you and George had broken up. He asked me if I thought you were over him yet. He asked her about me? Really? What did you tell him? Honestly, I told him I wasn't sure. She shrugged. So I sent you to order his cake as a nudge. I thought you'd make a great couple. I still do. My mouth dropped open. Why do you guys never tell me these things? She groaned. I did, repeatedly. Oh, right. I totally messed things up. She leveled me with a look. Then you, my dear, have got some groveling to do. Shaking my head, I groaned. You don't understand how mean I was yesterday. I don't think I can talk to him. Her hand touched my elbow. You don't have to talk with him. I let out the breath I'd been holding. I don't? No. Her lips spread into a smile. When the first song comes on, you have to ask him to dance. My heart stopped. I can't. You can, and you will. She held her glass up. I dare you. Chapter 10. As Ellen and Henry danced all close and cuddly to Come Away With Me by Norah Jones, I could hear a clock ticking in my head. Ask Chris to dance? Rach was so off my Christmas card list. She could forget a birthday gift, too. Every so often, I'd steal a quick peek at Chris's table where he was seated with the select few who'd been invited from work. Whenever our eyes met, I couldn't help wondering what he was thinking. Did he hate me? Did he think I was a total witch? Did he think I had invited Ethan? Probably not, since I hadn't been to his table at all, but still. I didn't want him to get the impression that I was interested in anyone else. Still, when the wedding party was invited to the dance floor, I kept imagining what it would be like if Josh were Chris. Dancing wouldn't be so bad. If he agreed to dance with me, that is. Oh man, what if he said no? Not like I could blame him if he did. After the song ended, Ellen danced with her dad. Although she didn't have high hopes for much of a relationship with him, since he'd been absent most of her life save for a few milestones like graduation, she'd said it did mean something for him to be at the wedding. So she would go into it with her eyes open and enjoy the moment with him, even if that was all it was. Halfway through the song, Henry brought his grandmother out to the dance floor. His mom had died when he was little, so his grandma had raised him, and the deep bond between them was obvious as they glided across the floor. When the song ended, I closed my eyes and swallowed. "You're up," Rach whispered in my ear, then took Henry to the dance floor while Ellen went to dance with the best man. Absolutely petrified and wanting to stall as long as possible, I let my eyes wash over everyone on the dance floor. It was easy to see how happy they all were. Even Kristen and Ethan seemed to be dancing rather closely. Interesting. How ironic that Ethan had turned into her date instead of mine. His dark eyes were fixated on her, too. It was as if everything had ended up as it should have. For everyone but me, that is. Things could change, but it would be up to me this time. I looked across the room, and even Chris looked happy talking to a girl I didn't recognize. She appeared to be interested in him, but I could tell the feeling wasn't mutual because I knew what he looked like when he was into someone. I knew the way he looked at me, the intensity of his baby blue eyes, the way he kissed me as if I were the only thing that mattered to him. My chest ached to feel that way again. There was only one way I might have that chance. I knew what I had to do. After the way I'd acted yesterday, he might reject me. But at least it wouldn't be because I hadn't been honest or because I had been too scared. I needed to lay it all on the line. Now. I pushed to my feet, ready to ask him to dance, then turned abruptly when someone took my hand. "George, what the—" "Come on." He pulled me toward the dance floor. "Let's dance." Shocked and confused, I followed him numbly while mumbling incoherently, Why in the world?" He put his arm around me and lifted my hand to his. "I'm so happy to see you, Gina. You look amazing." Closing my mouth, I blinked up at him. "What are you doing here?" "I've been trying to tell you I made a mistake." He looked down at me, his voice sincere. "This should be us right now. It should be our wedding." Immediately, I looked over at Chris, whose gaze was fixed on me, and he looked ready to take someone's head off. "No, it shouldn't be." I stepped back to put more space between us. "My only mistake is that I should have left sooner. It wasn't right. We weren't right." Because I knew what right felt like now. And he was heading this way. George's brows came together. "But I miss you." "We had good times, George. I blamed you for leading me on for 10 years, and I shouldn't have. The truth is, it's my fault for not ending it a long time ago. I'm the one who wasted all those years. It was my mistake, not yours." I turned just as Chris crossed the edge of the dance floor. "I'm sorry, but I have to go." Just as I spun around, Chris barreled up, and I put my hands against his chest to keep him from going near George. His jaw went tight. "What is he doing here? He had his chance." "Just leaving." I put a hand to Chris's face, trying to get him to look down at me instead of at George. When his eyes finally met mine, it took my breath away. Here went nothing. "I need to tell you something." He stared down at me as if processing what had just happened. "I'm listening." My heart pounded, a loud thump, 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 joining the beat of the slow song echoing through the speakers. "First, will you dance with me?" In answer, he snaked his hands around my waist and pulled me into his arms. Shivers raced down my spine from being so close to him, but also because of how he was looking at me, like I was still everything to him. It gave me a bit of hope, but I'd still never been so petrified in my life. I inhaled deeply. "I'm sorry for yesterday. You may not forgive me, but I was just scared. You're not the only one who's had their heart broken before." He closed his eyes, then cupped my face in his hands. "Gina, you know who broke my heart, don't you?" My brows came together, remembering what Rach had thought.
A girl from work. He ran his thumb along my jawline. You. Me? The word was barely a whisper. He nodded. Who else? All those years I had to watch you with someone else. I had no idea. I tightened my grip around his neck. That's the reason you made your rule about not dating in the workplace? He chuckled softly. There was no rule. My eyes bulged. What about you needing me to pretend to be your girlfriend? The corners of his mouth tipped up. Yeah, that was fun. Chris! I batted at his arm as he laughed. Then I raised my lashes at him. I never invited Ethan to the wedding. I only said that to push you away. His jaw tensed. I'm not gonna lie, that stung. Tears formed in my eyes. I'm sorry, if I could take it back. It hurt because I wasn't hitting on another man's girl. You're mine. His hand slid around the back of my neck, trailing its way up my jawbone until he cradled me in his arm. I am? Shivers raced through me and my heart pounded against my ribcage. I found myself leaning closer to him, our mouths a breath apart. I am. I'm glad you know that. His lids were heavy, but he held still, not closing that whisper of space between us. I've waited a long time for you, honey. Me too. With his lips so close to mine, I couldn't resist anymore. My lips finally found his. The kiss was electric, sending a rush of tingles all over me. Then our mouths opened in sync, tasting each other, savoring, filling every worry I'd had. Chris trailed kisses along my jaw, below my ear, and then whispered, I hope you want a house full of kids. I threw my head back and laughed. That's negotiable. Good. He tilted his forehead against mine. Why is it you never pick truth? I bit my lip and smiled. Because I'm a girl who goes for it. I just forgot that for a while. I pressed my lips against his. Thanks for reminding me. Anytime. He cradled my face in his hands. I'm calling you my girlfriend for real now. Like I said, you're mine. My face broke into a smile and all the happiness in the room flowed through me. Indefinitely, he pulled me close. If I have anything to say about it, forever. I rested my temple against his chest and melted into him. Now there's a truth I'll say yes to.
This has been The Pretend Promise, River City Sweethearts, written by Susan Hattler, narrated by Martha Lee. Copyright 2013 by Susan Hattler. Production copyright 2014 by Susan Hattler. Susan Hattler is a New York Times best-selling author of sweet, heartfelt romances filled with humor and emotion, as well as captivating young adult novels. Her books have charmed readers worldwide and have been translated from English into German, Italian, French, Spanish, Dutch, and Portuguese. A born optimist, Susan believes life is amazing, people are fascinating, and imagination is endless. She loves spending time with her unforgettable characters and hopes that you will too.